relationship types. Okay, who are they? Psychopathic, narcissistic, Machiavellian, and sadistic.
Because birth control is central to their cultural agenda. With fewer women on the pill, more women will become mothers. Some of them will drop out of the workforce and discover fulfillment and happiness as wives, as homemakers. And this is the real crisis that the Washington Post and the other left-wing rags are worried about. The last thing that the elites want to see is a movement of women fully embracing their own womanhood and men fully embracing their manhood.
So conservatives are always going to be really weird on the issues of things like sexual relationships. And we saw, that video going viral, or at least the thumbnail going viral, of Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson talking about sexual boredom. And I actually watched that video today. Don't watch it, but it's not really relevant to the topic, and it's actually a load of nonsense, to be honest, what they're saying.
The amount of sexual boredom in this society is extraordinary. So you have more sexual choice and variety available than literally any time in human history, given free license by the state because there are no intermediate social institutions in which sort of informal mechanisms of disapproval could make themselves felt. And one of the things it turns out psychologically that human beings are turned on by is taboo. And so when you get rid of literally every taboo, then people tend to get bored. And then the question is...
Yeah, well, there's no novelty.
Right, exactly. Novelty goes away. And particularly men are driven by sexual novelty. It's something that is very deeply ingrained. And the power of what marriage was supposed to be is it takes this
projection,
hedonic
projection.
Desire, and it's said, because female virtue still existed, that in order for you to obtain this, you're going to have to sublimate that desire for the building of something greater.
But I did want to talk today about the conservative war, basically against sex without procreation in mind, which, sounds really strange, and it is. And the weirder part of it now is I've always understood that in terms of a religious thing. I was raised Catholic, and of course I knew that because of the Catholic Church's stance on things like contraception, particularly condoms, there were loads of communities around the world that actually wouldn't use them, even when the transmission of STIs like HIV were absolutely rife, because their religious leaders told them that using this and basically putting any barrier between your body or like God's will and creating life is sinful and stuff. And you still do get that element of it, but now a lot of them talk about it as like it's a morally impure thing. Like Jordan Peterson, as we're gonna look at today, he talks about it being just like ethically bad to have casual relationships. Like he is the arbiter of morality, considering all the shit he says about so much stuff and how bad a person this is. It is funny him telling everyone else, yeah, the worst thing you can do in the world is like have like casual sex and casual relationships. But it is a darker thing because it's translating to Republicans are actually trying to basically make sure women have as little access to contraception as possible. Now, of course, you'll notice this discussion is mainly focused on men trying to take away contraception from women, not men trying to take contraception away from other men. That pretty much is not even in the discussion, to be honest, like condoms and stuff. It's mainly all focused on the pill, because all of this comes back to controlling women and controlling women's bodies, and conservative men fundamentally wanting to trap you in relationships with them and you to serve as their baby machine and maid, as it's very clear Matt Walsh sees women as this. So I want to talk about all of this today, and yeah, follow me on social media at The Cavernacle on my personal Instagram and also my travel Instagram, and check me out on Threads and BlueSky. And if you want to support the channel, trying to build up as many $1 to $3 patrons as possible, and benefits include on Patreon getting access to videos early, and you can also watch them ad-free on Patreon itself. And if you want to, you can also join the patron-only Discord server. With all of that out of the way, let's get into the video. So fear-mongering specifically about the contraceptive pill for women literally has been something that has been going on basically since the pill became widely available. And an article in CBS, and I think it's interesting because we're going to hear this sentiment echoed today. In a 1966 feature on the pill and morality, the magazine US News and the World Report asked, is the pill regarded as a license for promiscuity? Can its availability to all women of childbearing age lead to sexual anarchy? For author Pearl Buck took an even more dire doomsday approach to the pill when she warned in a 1968 Reader's Digest article, "Everyone knows what the pill is. It is a small object, yet its potential effect upon our society may even be more devastating than a nuclear bomb." And this is something I actually heard like Matt Walsh describe today, so it's clear whoever this woman is, he's been reading this woman and it mirrors his own views. The funny thing is, obviously we know the 1960s, particularly in America, as like the sexual revolution. But what is also funny is you can only really argue against the pill and a woman having the ability to choose if she wants to take it or not if you come at it from, yeah, like patriarchy, the status quo, and keeping women in their place we put them in. That is all like a really, really good thing. And yeah, when half the population are women, it's pretty likely they're not going to see it that way and not see the benefits of being able to engage in relationships without the massive risk of having someone else's child, which will then tie you to them basically for the rest of your life, potentially. Now, obviously, a lot of what these conservatives do is they take the well-documented side effects of the pill and they use that against everyone advocating for it. It's like, don't put this poison into your body. And why they do that is because, you know, it is a well-known side effect. Like, I know women in my own life and they spoke about it, how the pill does have pretty terrible side effects on things like mood and everything, and they've actually chosen not to take it. I've known people in my circle who said they don't take it anymore because the side effects are so terrible, right? So it's up to them to have contraception a different way, whether that be, you know, the man taking the initiative, being more careful, wearing a condom, or other forms of contraception women can use. But at the same time, like with everything, it's a choice, and for lots of women they use it for medical reasons. It's not all about like casual hookups with some random bloke and stuff. But yeah, it's funny to me, conservatives who position themselves as the champions of freedom are so against things like contraception specifically for women. And also, you're not going to hear this outright, but I want everyone to keep this in mind. Obviously, the people you're going to see today are white people. White North Americans, and I think I have a British woman. And they're worried mainly about white people not having enough children because, yeah, they're terrified of the great replacement. Now, Elon Musk also is someone who advocates against contraception because he has some sort of breeding kink. And I might make a whole video on this. I've been actually pretty horrified as I've made my way through the Dune books. I'm currently on the God Emperor one. It's pretty, like, insane to see that Elon Musk clearly models a lot of his politics on these books, especially the breeding programs. I wouldn't be surprised if Elon Musk actually sees himself as like God Emperor Leto II. I might delve into that in a whole video because it is very disgusting. So I know Elon Musk is obsessed with science fiction, but let's get into the more serious issues a bit more. So let's talk about conservative influencers in America. I just want to talk about Jordan Peterson, who's just so strange on this, and he doesn't come at it from the angle of explicitly that it's something religious. It's more about just like hedonism is just morally bad according to him. So let's listen to some of his arguments against just like casual relationships and casual sex.
I don't think there's any such thing as a casual sexual relationship. I don't believe that. I've never seen any evidence that that's the case.
The insecurity, like, just...
Our side's taking zone A.
Only true expression. I'm insecure because people made fun of my Kermit the Frog voice when I was a kid. Especially the girls. I need a stand-handed girlfriend because girls made fun of my Kermit the Frog voice when I was a kid. Projection.
I think that people rationalize that constantly because they want to believe, that short-term hedonistic gratification is ethically acceptable. And I don't think it is. I think that it trains you to treat yourself and other people as instrumental objects of short-term pleasure. obviously. Is that how you want to train yourself? You're going to have a long-term relationship at some point? How are you going to train yourself for that? Okay, so having said that...
What is he talking? Train yourself for a long-term... What does that mean? Like, one size doesn't fit all as far as relationships go. I think otherwise it's pretty silly. And again, dripping with projection and insecurity on your part, sir. You should leave your problems to yourself. As someone who claims to be a psychologist or psychiatrist, psychologist, you should possibly mind your own issues. Be a little bit more mindful, a bit more demure. I think we'll go a long way for Jordan Peterson. Dig what I'm saying?
Don't dispute it.
Can you see?
Compromise.
Thank you.
And then, how carefully should we conduct ourselves in sexual matters? I would say, well, as carefully as you conduct yourself in any matter of importance. And that stretches all the way up to the top, whatever the top is. You know, you're going to treat the other person as if they're a divine locus of consciousness or a disposable entity. Well, you know, those are the borders. I don't think there is such a thing as casual sex. I think that's indistinguishable from masturbation, which I also don't regard as a particularly heroic act. And I think people have that sense, and I don't think that that's culturally instantiated, because in some sense we've done everything we can.
It blows my mind that people like listen to what this guy has to say, and they're like, yeah, you know what that says? If you listen to Jordan Peterson, what he says, and you're like, this man's a genius, you are just as insecure as Jordan Peterson, who is so insecure and projects it all over his entire world.
Other side messing with Steve.
Fucking weird shit about chaos. It's all personal shit, bro. Take care of your shit before you try to convince other people that listen to what you gotta say. You're obviously working some shit out, homie. And obviously something weird with your paternal grandmother and the by the pool shit. Look into that, dude. That's not normal. You haven't worked. Did you work that out? Did you come to any kind of conclusions concerning your paternal grandmother and the poem made from what was that again? Pubic hair. What a weird name. So it was. I didn't read the book, but like, I hope you. I mean, I don't know why anyone would share that unless you've got a really. If I had a rationale or something like that, I would probably be talking about it all the time. Like if I for some reason felt compelled to not just put in a book, but also in the audiobook, read it with my words to be recorded, like I'm doing right now, kind of. But I'm not saying things like this little dream, which was just strange. But if you've got a reason to open up about that, I would make it clear, probably at all times. Why would you do that? I still don't think I have an answer. I mean, like I said, I haven't read the book. I've listened to a lot of your talks. I actually went positive. Thanks, Jordan Peterson. Thank you. Wow. Actually, maybe it was his wisdom that made me go positive in XDefiant while not paying attention. Chaos Dragons, much. Let's continue.
To eradicate every last vestige of sexual shame, I wanted to have a serious conversation about sexual impropriety on campuses, for example. The first thing we'd focus on is alcohol, but we don't want to have a serious conversation about that because, well, we don't want to have chaperoned parties like there were in the 1950s. You know, it's like, well, you know, having some older people around to keep the drunken orgy under control actually turns out.
Why won't my students invite me to their parties?
Not to be such a bad idea.
I love in that how Jordan Peterson is just such a nerd that he talks about, yeah, we should chaperone gatherings of young people taking alcohol because, yeah, that's actually a good thing to police people morally. And I do find it funny.
You know what? I need, since it was brought up, I need clarity. It's Jordan Peterson, paternal grandmother. Jordan Peterson. Paternal grandmother. Yeah, that's down there. Paternal grandmother. Cool. Here we go. It's only 50. I need the. Okay, well let's watch. Oh, we'll get this. Is this the full? It's only 50 seconds. All right, let's check this one out real quick.
I dreamed I saw my maternal grandmother sitting by the bank of a swimming pool, which was also a river. Her genital region was exposed dimly. It had the appearance of a thick mat of hair. She was stroking herself absent-mindedly. She walked over to me with a handful of pubic hair compacted into something resembling a large artist's paintbrush. She pushed this at my face. I raised my arm several times to deflect her hand. Finally, unwilling to hurt her or interfere with her any further, I let her have her way. She stroked my face with the brush gently and said, like a child, "Isn't it soft?" I looked at her ruined face and said, "Yes, Grandma, it's soft."
Yes, Grandma. Soft. Oh, okay. Bad Empanada had a take on it. Thank God.
What is Jordan Peterson Grandma Dream? It's literally called Jordan Peterson Grandma Dream. We are going to watch the Jordan Peterson Grandma Dream clip. It has been decided. Are you ready? Are you ready? Let's go. Jordan Peterson Grandma Dream.
I dreamed I saw my maternal grandmother sitting by the bank of a swimming pool, which was also a river. Her genital region was exposed dimly.
Her genital region was exposed dimly. You couldn't get this out of me with Guantanamo Bay level torture stuff, and he just wrote about this in like what is supposed to be his magnum opus book, like openly. What in the holy hell?
It had the appearance of a thick mat of hair.
Dude, that is too much information about Jordan, about your grandma's genital region.
Dude, right?
Dude,
indeed. Dude.
She was stroking herself absent.
Jordan, you are a weird motherfucker. You are one weird ass motherfucker, Jordan. Jordan, this is not okay, Jordan. Jordan, you should keep your grandma dreams to yourself in the future, please.
100%.
Mindedly.
I'm glad. I feel heard.
She walked over to me with a handful of pubic hair compacted into something resembling a large artist's paintbrush.
Jordan? I'm speechless, Jordan. Why would he like, it's so ridiculous and so specific that I doubt it ever happened, which makes it worse in my opinion, because that would mean that he made this up. Like, he came up with this. He came up with this and then voluntarily chose to write about it, which is so much worse than even him actually drinking.
My cat does not want the treats I've given him. Looking at me like I've got any other treats. Like, I give him the treats. He's like, no, give me the treats. Like, I don't have any other treats. He's staring at me like he's like, no, give me the treats. Eat those. Oh, okay. I can eat them. Money well spent. Thanks a lot. Get a job.
Dreaming it that it's unreal. This is incredible.
She pushed this at my face. I raised my arm several times to deflect her hand.
To deflect the pubic hair paintbrush. And what is like the point of this? Like, Where does he go with this? Why is he saying this? It's just like he wants to throw it in
Now
there
he's
for some
eating.
reason.
So weird.
Finally,
Weird. I don't
unwilling
get
to
it.
hurt her
I don't
or
need to get it.
interfere with her any further, I let her have her way.
Oh my God, that's a phrase. He let his grandma have his way. He let his naked grandma with pubic hair in her hands have his way. Oh my God, what does that mean, Jordan? Do I want to know? Yeah, I do actually.
She stroked my face with the brush gently and said, like a child, "Isn't it soft?"
Oh my God.
I looked at her ruined face and said, "Yes, Grandma, it's soft."
Yes, Grandma. It's soft? Dude, what the hell?
Said
Where does he
Norman
go with
Bates.
that? I don't know. but
Yes,
I mean,
Grandma, it's
that's
soft.
insane. Why is that there? I'm not going to look into like why that's actually there. I'm not going to look into the context. It's bad enough that it's in there. Even if there is context, there's no context where like either like if that was a dream, it would already be fucking insane. But the fact that I'm pretty sure he just made that the fuck up in order to like try and back up some points in his insane like pseudo-psychology book makes it even worse. How did you come up with that, Jordan Peterson, you fucking weirdo? Jesus Christ. Amazing. Jordan Peterson, Grandma Dream, everyone. It is indeed soft, Grandma.
Deathmatch. I think you'll be in your element here. 3, 2, 1. Kill all enemies. You trained your whole life for this.
And welcome to another installment of the greatest literature. And is the dead fetus breeds vessel.
The whole thing's like this, dude.
Over time, especially Jordan Peterson, how much they demonize what they perceive to be like Islamists and stuff. And it's like, you agree with all of them on everything, right? Like, religious conservatives, you just all agree with each other. If you realize that, it would be really dangerous for the rest of us because you'd all unite and subject us all to this conservative, religious, whatever he likes to call it, morality. But yeah, that is like interesting how he doesn't think, you know, it's ethically right to have casual sexual relationships. And the only purpose of them, the only purpose of having a sexual relationship with anyone before, I don't know, getting into like a serious relationship or getting like engaged and stuff, is just for hedonistic pleasure. Now, of course, hookup culture is a thing, and yeah, I don't care about that at all. I don't think most modern people really care about it at all. There is a lot to be said about, you know, relationships in the social media age, dating apps and all that stuff, and I get it. But if there are downsides, the plus sides are you want to know if you're sexually compatible with someone before you like make the commitment or a longer term commitment, right? It's obviously a good way to realize if you're a woman, because that's what we're talking about here from this point of view today. You know, intimacy does say a lot about someone in terms of like if they're selfish, how they actually act in that moment. Do they care about the gratification of both of you, or is it all about them? And although people like Jordan Peterson, if you just see sex as an act to make children, people really don't care about that part because why would you? But for most modern people, that's important to a relationship. And it's something that could obviously cause issues in the future. So if you experience it early on, you can thankfully factor that into your judgment of the overall relationship. And also, I've seen so many posts on the relationship Reddit of people who get married very young from religious backgrounds, whether that be like arranged marriages in like South Asian communities, or what happens a lot in like white Christian evangelical communities in the US, people getting married at like 20 years old and then realizing, oh, you know, this sex life is just not satisfying to me and I gotta be with this person until I die. Like, yeah, that's the benefit of the sexual revolution, that all genders can get a glimpse quickly into what the dynamic will be like, and they can make a better judgment of if they could work through that, or if they're like compatible at all. And of course, that goes without saying, everyone has their own taste. People have things like kinks that are important to them as well, and important to their experience of this stuff. And you just might not be compatible on that level. And I know to a lot of Christian religious types that's not important, but to most like, you know, more modern people, that is important.
Nowhere to
And
hide.
especially how we're generally taught about sex in like a patriarchal system, it's important to women to see if a man will prioritize her as well, because as men, we're not really taught much about that, right? You kind of have to discover it on your own. And I remember when I was taking like sex education in school, we barely learned anything about women. And it's not like I grew up in a really repressed time or anything like that, right? So I'd hate to think about how these men, especially if you listen to Jordan Peterson or Matt Walsh, what you would be like. So yeah, I think the casual hookup culture has the plus side of people being able to work this out. So yeah, it's a good thing. I'm not a religious conservative. I'm not someone who grew up repressed. I don't have loads of judgments on these things like people like Jordan Peterson. I just find this like demonizing of it from his perspective in terms of him saying it's not fulfilling or helpful to human lives. Really bizarre. But we have the darker side, of course, when we have people like fascists, like Matt Walsh talking about this as well. Now, he has a couple videos on this. He has been against contraception for a long, long time because he believes if, you know, you can't handle the responsibility of having a child from this act, then just abstain. And I don't even think I got taught that in Catholic secondary school, because they just appreciated the realities of just like modern life. People are just gonna have sex anyway, so you better give them contraception, especially like older teenagers, and they're not really thinking about the child side. But yeah, I have this video here, and I think it reveals a lot.
Because birth control is central to their cultural agenda. With fewer women on the pill, more women will become mothers. Some of them will drop out of the workforce and discover fulfillment and happiness as wives, as homemakers. And this is the real crisis that the Washington Post and the other left-wing rags are worried about. The last thing that the elites want to see is a movement of women fully embracing their own womanhood and men fully embracing their manhood.
Heal me!
Women need to achieve their, how do you put it again? Sorry, that was good.
And this is the real crisis that the Washington Post and the other left-wing rags are worried about. The last thing that the elites want to see is a movement of women fully embracing their own womanhood.
Women fully embracing their own womanhood as depicted by a right-wing nutbag like me. My idea of what womanhood is, which is psychotic. And you hates it. You fucking weirdo. Everyone hates it.
Annihilate the other side. That's the whole
Fulfill
job.
themselves.
Rags are worried about. The last thing that the elites want to see is a movement of women fully embracing their own
Hey,
womanhood
this is no time to sulk in a
and
haystack.
men fully
The chips
embracing
are
their
down.
manhood. A move back towards the family, away from materialism, away from self-preoccupation, towards marriage, towards parenthood. That's what they don't want to see. These people have been waging a war on the family for decades. And the birth control pill was their nuclear.
I mean, I don't know why this argument's not made as much that I'm about to say, but doesn't all that shit sound fucking terrible? Don't care about your own stuff. Just give yourself completely over to these societal, established, strict gender roles. You're not letting women embrace the strict roles we want to impose on them as men. Won't let them do it. Repressing them. It's psychotic. And your idea of life sounds terrible. It just sounds boring. It sounds unfulfilling.
Oh, this is not great.
And if people like you suck, man. Nobody likes you, bro. Why do you want everyone to be like you? You want everyone not to like each other? Everyone to be miserable as shit? Yeah, I think you do. It's literally all right-wingers do, just project their own insecurities, misery, fears. Everything just sucks. They just, it's like they don't just project it. They have like a hose of goo of it. Just they spray it on everything around them. And their eyeballs. Fucking psychos, man. They're assholes too. I mean, dude, who wants to live like that? Let's roll that again. This sounds sucky, in my opinion.
Drop out of the workforce and discover fulfillment and happiness as wives, as home.
And have no money and to be financially dependent on someone. That's not fulfilling. It's dangerous. Yeah. You put them in a very bad situation. You don't give a fuck about that.
Homemakers. And this is the real crisis that the Washington Post and the other left-wing rags are worried about.
Washington Post, all those communists down the Washington Post. It's the hyperbole of these fucking psychos. It's truly brain rotting. It really is. It'll turn your brain into dog shit. If you can swallow the shit he's fucking feeding you, dude, you can swallow a whole lot of fucking dumb shit. Just start building an appetite for the worst shit. Good God. Okay, let's continue.
About. The last thing that the elites want to see is a movement of women fully embracing their own womanhood.
As imposed by them, by the patriarchy. You're not letting women have a chance to do that. Got it.
And men fully embracing their manhood.
Don't be gay. Hey, you men aren't fully embracing your manhood, aka you're gay. So don't be. Embrace the role society has imposed on you. Do it. You'll love it. Live it or else. God, it's so fulfilling. Ah! Ah!
A move back towards the family, away from materialism, away from self-preoccupation, towards.
Don't live for yourself. Be miserable like Matt Walsh. If you have hopes and dreams, fuck those. Embrace whatever the fuck he's talking about.
Towards marriage, towards parenthood.
And those things are good because we need more people. There's no environmental crisis going on where people should maybe lay off on the procreating. Not saying completely, but this idea of this abundance of this 1950s, got a car full of 4 kids and shit, dad's at work, mom's home cooking. That is anti. Okay, I'm about to sound like some fucking nutbag. But honestly, that whole imagery is basically just anti-communist Cold War propaganda. This idea that capitalism can fulfill these things, and it's and this fantasy of this solid structure of the family. If things are just in place and everyone's doing what they're supposed to do, everything will be fine. In fact, it's what society is based on. It's a lie, man. Things haven't always been like this. Yeah, this idea of marriage that you're talking about in the Middle Ages, laughable. And then during the 1950s, during the Cold War, when we were trying to assure the world that we're better than the Soviet Union, that look what we can give you. But Cold War's over. That fantasy's over too. Trying to keep that alive is not only stupid and pointless and miserable, but it's erode society. I'll just say it. In my opinion.
That's what they don't want to see. These people have been waging a war on the family for decades. And the birth control pill was their nuclear bomb.
Hot shot.
This framing
Your
is like
adversaries collect their
shocking.
bounty. Right in your wheelhouse.
This framing is mind blowing.
3, 2, 1.
We're gonna destroy
Grab the
the
most bounties to
family.
become the hot shot
Finally,
and
we
turn
have our
extra
nuke.
super duper deadly.
Drop the birth control. Bodies burning. Talking about.
Our side's got its first hot shot. Keep them safe.
Oh. I mean, again, just more projection. It's fucking weird, violent.
Got a lock on the first enemy hot shot.
Worldview.
Deal with them.
Everything's war. Everything's a battle.
Hot shot on
That's
our
what
team.
fascists.
Cover
That's
them
kind
while
of the
they get
thing,
the
though.
goods.
Fascists are like, you ain't fighting, then what are you doing? You need to be fighting somebody. If you ain't fighting somebody, we're getting soft. We're not proving ourselves as male.
Let your hot shot get bounties when possible. Face it. Have to state the obvious. Start fire.
Fight, fight, fight. I mean, I'm all about fighting. Don't get me wrong, but it's not. It's definitely not a means to an end. I believe in defending yourself, and I believe in destroying true threats. I mean, that's there's a slippery slope there, because the right wing will frame
A little revenge.
something as a threat, and something that is a threat must be destroyed. But the problem with them is that and fascist is actually a true threat to life on Earth. I don't give a fuck if you think that's hyperbole. The policies they want to push forward are not going to take us into the right direction. I mean, the correct direction. As far as economic development, environment, like the necessity of diversity to keep
New hot shot.
cultural,
Not a friend.
because like this idea that like we need to preserve this culture is devastating. I think we can look at Japan and kind of see the results of these kind of policies. It's miserable. There's this one town that's like had to build little dolls of children because there's no children anymore. Everyone's just old.
Our team has a hot shot. Protect them.
Whatever, dude. I'm just saying they're just objectively wrong. This idea is people rallying against like DI. And this is just basic shit.
Assassinated.
It's like we do better without these kind of restrictions, without us trying to like gatekeep. Just the idea of like we need to keep things static as far as culture goes. But I mean, just think about it like this: like you listen to music, like music tastes change, right? And you get influence from all sorts of places, and it would suck if you had restrictions to the different genres of music that you might enjoy. But like under this idea, like it's like saying this is who you like and you must like it forever. You have to listen to this album over and over and over again until you die. And any attempt to diversify your tastes, unacceptable. It could get you into a lot of trouble. It sounds horrible, doesn't it? Like nationalism is like anti-freedom.
Our hotshot's really raking in the thingies.
It's the truth. Diversity is the antidote to cultural stagnation. It's how cultures evolve. How cultures and that's like not even touching on like the economic aspects.
I'm feeling good about this fight. Hotshot's not a friend. Kill me! Got a new hotshot.
She's an asshole.
The family is the greatest threat to them. In a society full of families, of
Maybe
intact,
hotshot is your
happy
priority
families with
mark.
attentive
Get 'em,
mothers
initiate.
and strong fathers, that is a society
Another evil
that has
plot
rendered these
foiled.
people
No big
basically
deal.
powerless. That is their fear.
Oh, he's talking about the feminists. Because that's what the feminists want.
And they fear it like they fear nothing else.
So yeah, in Matt Walsh's ideal future, it'd basically be like Germany in the 1930s, right? Women would know their role because they're happier as mothers, right? And men would be manly and they just have like infinite numbers
Yeah, women are happier as mothers. Citation needed. Thank you.
of children. Now, obviously, he said the nuclear bomb quote there as well because they see everything to do with the pill and sexual liberation as an attack on the family. But also, if we're going to make this argument, right, that society is better with happy families, why is the contraceptive pill not a good thing to that degree, right? Because if you're not on contraception and we accept that more casual relationships are more common, if you just get pregnant with a random person and then, you know, in Matt Walsh's framing, he wants people to be happy wives and mothers or whatever, right?
Got me some hummus going here. Not Sabra. Hopefully not owned by Sabra. That would be disappointing. Need a free Palestine. Thank you for shopping.
Are you going to be more happy if you can control who you have children with, or you might end up with some random person and have their child? Will you be a happy wife and mother then? Of course you won't, and that doesn't lead to happy families. So controlling who you can have a child with is way more beneficial, even to the aim he's talking about. But again, he doesn't want women's agency. He doesn't want women to decide if they want to become wives and mothers. He thinks all women should just be baby machines, and that is their worth to society. Because this guy is a fascist. Not that he needs to tell us that anymore. But yeah, that argument is ridiculous. And you can see conservatives don't care about freedom. Any conservative. They just want to control you. They want to control women. And they want to do this for what they feel like is men's benefit. Because Matt Walsh is a guy who has like 6 children, probably isn't very active in their lives, just sits around the Daily Wire studios making terrible videos while his wife does everything. And like I've always shown you that clip, there's a clip of them all bragging about how they do no housework. Doesn't seem like a very equal relationship. And I bet most people in a relationship like that, yeah, they probably have some issues if you're not splitting the housework. And I wouldn't call people trapped in these marriages and trapped with children people who'd be like particularly happy. But again, Matt Walsh knows what's best for you, just knock you up. And also what they want to do is end no-fault divorce. So if you actually have someone's child, you think they're the one, and they turn out to be a monster, oh, you can't actually leave. So you're trapped with them forever with the legal binding and having a child as well. People like Matt Walsh just want to live in The Handmaid's Tale. So I saw this other video on the Heritage Foundation page, and this one was funny. They're saying it's like pro-feminist to be against the pill, but also coated in some very weird conservative language. So listen to this.
I hear from a great many young women who were put on the pill at the age of 14 and came off it nearly 10 years later and realized they'd done a complete personality flip, and actually they, you know, I was, one said, and I quote, I thought I was bipolar. But then it turned out actually it was just this psychoactive substance that I'd been. What were they doing to me? And this is all, and this was all to the purpose of rendering a woman receptive to what is for the most part loveless and sometimes extremely degrading sexual access. And I struggle to see in what way that's in women's interests. And given the great many other things that, to my eye, are downstream of the entry into that paradigm, it seems to me that a good place to start would be a feminist movement against the pill. For rewilding sex, returning the danger to sex, and and really the consequentiality of sex. And a great deal follows from an intentional reconnection of women's opting intentionally to reconnect with the fullness of our embodied nature.
So basically, like maybe like a more woke version of just saying what Matt Walsh was saying there, basically saying that you shouldn't have sex unless you want to procreate, and it would actually be a feminist position to get rid of the pill, because with the pill, sex has become meaningless and often like really, really degrading for women. So it's not like a pro-women position to be pro the pill, which allows you to have more casual relationships at like a minimum, but also, like I said, you can be on the pill and be in like a long-term relationship and you want to get pregnant. Like, what's wrong with that? Like, how does that diminish the sexual experience? And also, humans have been having casual sexual relationships for as long as humans existed. Like, these people often talk about like the greatness of Sparta, of ancient Athens, or ancient Rome, and all these other societies before Christianity, right? They all love them, especially that Roman Empire one. Like, people like Matt Walsh love the Roman Empire. Like, what do you think these people do? I think humans have done throughout all of human history. They not engage in casual sex because they didn't have a contraceptive pill. Is that something that really, really happened? No, of course it didn't. Someone who grew up in the Christian faith and stuff like that, I understand that religions like Christianity have heavily demonized this stuff, and pretty much like lots of the stuff I'm showing you today is just a result of the Christian faith. But at the same time, acting like the actual natural order of being a human is only having sex for the purpose of procreation, which, you know, is just not true. Now, just on this religious note as well, I was reading some rando, like, American, like, Catholic Christian blog. I don't know who this person is, but I just wanted to end it with this. So, guy called Christopher West. So the question of contraception is what caused me to leave the Catholic Church in the 1980s, and as I continue to wrestle with it, it's what brought me back in the 90s. As more and more people like me search for the source of today's societal chaos and gender confusion, they're rediscovering the sexual map that all Christian churches understood until rather recently. When we fail to reverence the fact that genitals are meant to generate, society itself degenerates. You realise today that until 1930, all Christian leaders condemned contraception. That year, the Anglican bishops were first to succumb to the external pressures and reluctantly change their position. In the years that followed, denomination after denomination shifted from condemnation of contraception to acceptance to advocacy. With the dawn of the pill in the 1960s, global pressure was now being put on the Catholic Church. Pope Paul VI shocked the world in 1968 when he issued Of Human Life, reaffirming traditional Christian teaching against contraception, including the pill. He was scorned globally, but he understood well that a contracepting world would become a world of rampant immorality. A world where women and childbearing are degraded, a world in which governments trample on the rights of the family, and a world in which human beings believe they can manipulate their bodies at will. Welcome to the new world order. So I think that from a very conservative Catholic American just sums up like how they view this stuff. They view it as all linked together, as they always have with the sexual revolution. Like, once you just give them an inch with maybe a contraceptive pill, they're just going to destroy everything. So people being transgender or gay, that is also linked to the contraceptive pill, all that stuff. But of course, all these people think religion is the basis of our morality, despite the fact that like throughout human history, all these religions have been used to justify terrible things, and some of the most immoral people in our current society, just think of all these terrible world leaders, think of Netanyahu, think of President Putin, think of someone like Joe Biden, all claim to be people of like the Christian faith, but have no problem with killing hundreds of thousands of people. And often they do it for this faith as well, as we see in places like Israel. It's very clear, even if they're coming at it from a medical angle, which they skew the facts, it's all about the religious angle. And it's all about the Catholic version of family or the fascist Christian version of family, where women don't have autonomy, women don't have choices, women have to just have sex to procreate because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter about women's pleasure or anything like that. It's all about just a man has sex with you to have his offspring. You will raise it and he won't actually really help with that. And you'll be trapped in that marriage to the end of time. Like many generations that came before us, when our society was even more patriarchal. And that's what they hate. They just hate equality, and they just hate gender equality. And thankfully, you know, in many countries like the UK, we're seeing that being pushed back a lot, because we did get a lot of the more like Christian MPs actually voted out recently who did believe stuff like this about things like contraception. But with America, it's of course a real danger, because although most Americans, even most Republicans, agree with contraception, when you have a small group like, you know, people in the Heritage Foundation or just generally rich evangelicals who donate a lot to the Republican Party, they can get stuff like this passed. Because the capitalist system has subverted democracy, which allows just a few rich people to get their religious agenda passed and try and turn back the clock on women's rights. So that is another fear with things like Project 2025 and just Republican and conservative governments around the world. But that is it for the video. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. And if you made it this far, thank you for
By the way, those are the only two options. Ladies and gentlemen, the right stuff is all about getting into the right dating pool with people who share the same values and beliefs as you. You'll start off by building your perfect profile. No pronouns necessary.
So I'm the one who created a fake Republican profile on the Republican dating app called The Right Stuff. And I've been showing you guys some of the ridiculous profiles that I found, but now I get to show you some of the conversations. This guy goes, and I said, yeah, there's something about the altitude that makes everybody here want universal health care. Then he claps back with this horrifying answer. Not sure if it's just the altitude that makes them want that, because everyone here also wants universal health care. Though that's probably because they're either some immigrant from a whole country, you okay with cursing, some obsessed thug, or some gender ideology major.
Liberal on a dinner date.
You know, they don't split checks here, so I'll throw it on my card and you can Venmo me later. We'll split it right down the center.
Liberal man on a lunch date.
It's so funny that he thought I got the burger. Yum. My pronouns are he, him.
So I have made a fair few videos on this channel about conservative dating apps, and
Dude,
more
more
recently
salads.
about like conservative
Sell those
men
burgers,
just
brah.
increasingly
Breakfast
going
easy shit.
insane
Wait.
and talking about like conservative women either renouncing their former trad wife lives like Lauren Southern, or just basically complaining about misogyny on the right, which, you know, most people would expect. But today I want to talk about something I made a video on, I think a year and a half ago now, a dating app called The Right Stuff. And I know a couple people have covered this since, like much bigger creators, but there's an interesting wrinkle to this in that the guy who made this app, it appears they've purged all the tweets. He's joined the Heritage Foundation and is helping them with Project 2025, which I want to talk about as well, because there's two things in that, of course, it does sound terrible. And also we're seeing people like Joe Biden tweet Google Project 2025. And I just find that interesting, so I want to talk about that as well. And also, I found a TikToker who actually signed up to the app and used it and just like documented their experience. So I wanted to share that too, because yeah, conservative men really aren't doing okay. And I guess in America, the landscape is different, because especially for Gen Z people, we have something called shy Tories, right? People who pretend they aren't conservative, and would maybe not even ever say they vote conservative, but maybe you kind of know it, or maybe they might surprise you. But because increasingly Gen Z are more left-wing, being conservative is less popular. And especially on dating apps now, you can actually put in stuff about politics. It makes sense for especially guys who across Gen Z are leaning more right than women are to lie about their politics. But that's why I find it fascinating in America. They just like straight up say the most insane shit on dating apps, as we're going to look at today. So all of that coming up for you today. Please follow me on social media at The Tabernacle on my Instagram page, my personal and my travel Instagram. Also, check me out on Threads and BlueSky, and consider becoming a patron. Trying to build up as many $1 to $3 patrons as possible. Benefits include early access to videos like this, and also you can watch them ad-free on the Patreon page itself. And you also get access to the Discord server. With that out of the way, let's get into the video. So if you've seen my other video on this, you might be seeing some footage I've definitely played before, because I'm going to take it from that old video. But I'm well aware from my analytics, most people who watch a new video of mine aren't subscribed to me, so it's very unlikely you would have seen that old video. And even if you had subscribed to me, you probably haven't as well. So basically, there was a conservative dating app, or I guess there still is one, called The Right Stuff. And it was launched, I think, in 2022, filled with like really, really cringy adverts. So I think I'm gonna play two for you. There's one where, I mean, look, of course, these women are probably not conservative and they're actresses, but they're talking about what they look for on a dating app in regards to men, and they all, funnily enough, want conservative men adhering to traditional patriarchal, I guess, gender norms put on men, and that's what they can find on The Right Stuff, because I guess all the other dating apps are filled with liberals drinking soy lattes and having man buns or something. And there's another ad I want to play you, just like apparently some testimony, which is just like the most bizarre video I've seen and doesn't really seem like a good advertisement for a dating app.
Today, we brought in a group of conservative young women and wanted to get their honest opinions about what they're looking for in the guys they date. What are you looking for in a partner?
They just have to be a conservative.
Definitely someone that wants to have kids.
I like an independent man. Personally, I like the alpha male vibe.
I want a man who really loves his family.
Definitely someone whose faith is important to them.
For me, it's someone who actually wants to meet my parents.
Why do you want to date a conservative?
For me, at least I know that we're going to start off with some shared values.
Well, the conservative men I've dated at least know how to treat me like a woman.
In my personal experience, conservative guys have better manners.
I like that they understand their role in the relationship as a man. I just prefer my men to be masculine.
Appropriate.
And what's the biggest red flag when it comes to dating?
A Democrat. No Democrats. A Democrat. Can't be a Democrat. A Democrat.
That's easy. A Democrat.
No Democrats. No.
We're going for
Find the
zone
right
B.
match. Download The Right Stuff today.
It's a tough dating landscape out there. There's really no way to meet somebody that's like-minded, that shares very similar morals to you. Conservative women can be hard to find, but they are out there. And I found them by joining The Right Stuff. This app is so much more than just an app. It's really a movement. It gives you a chance to be yourself.
Capture zone contested.
When you join The Right
Zone
Stuff,
secure.
your dating life will completely change. It's about conservatives sticking together.
Oh yeah, the advertising.
Yo, where is she?
There's been a lot of conservative dating apps that have seemed to all fail.
It's like,
pretty
yo, I met
quickly.
someone on here.
And this seems to be no exception, because there are lots of reports that the sign-ups were low, even though it was backed by
I gotta
people
show you
like
shit.
Peter Thiel, and obviously the guy who ran it, which we're going to talk about, used to work in the Trump White House, John McEntee, and as we're going to talk about later, and as we talked about previously, has made the brand's pages on social media into his own like personal social media, which I think is really strange. But also, this guy claims he came up with the idea because he couldn't find any conservative women in like DC who would date him, which I think says a lot. What you saw with a lot of these apps, the advertising was, oh, people felt like they had to censor themselves from their conservative values because it would turn especially women off. So here is now an app where like you don't have to do this, and unsurprisingly, most of these apps were just completely filled with dudes, because as we're seeing with conservative women, and I've talked about this a lot, no matter how much women you play into conservative talking points, or you even genuinely believe what conservative men are saying, they're never going to accept you, right? Because they see you fundamentally as inferior, and most of them probably want you to just stay at home and look after their children and basically have no rights. Even lately, obviously they're talking about getting rid of no-fault divorce. They're talking about even really fringe stuff like getting rid of women's right to vote and stuff. So I guess a few conservative women are waking up to those old liberal feminists who probably like did have a point in what they were saying, and helped get you some semblance of equality under this patriarchal system, which, you know, we enjoy in places like the UK and America. It's not perfect, of course, but they're seeing that the alternative that these men want to drag you back to is actually worse than what you have now. And also, I recognise you can get a lot of normal people who like lean conservative because of like maybe their cultural upbringing, or maybe they're religious or something like that. At the same time, even a lot of these people are really turned off from these like wacko conservatives, because yeah, saying like I want kids and I want to get married in the church isn't the same as you know, men saying, you will stay at home and never leave and just exist to basically cook my dinner and have my children and stuff. But again, that's what conservatives are now saying. So thankfully, although I as a British person can't even sign up for this app, a TikTok user called Anaconda309 has been documenting her journey on the app. I'll link her TikTok profile page because she has like 25 different videos on this, but I just want to share like a few with you, mainly her conversations with potential dates, which I just think are really, really interesting. So let's look at them.
So I'm the one who created a fake Republican profile on the Republican dating app called The Right Stuff. And I've been showing you guys some of the ridiculous profiles that I found, but now I get to show you some of the conversations. This guy goes, Colorado is so liberal, not as bad as New York though. And I said, yeah, there's something about the altitude that makes everybody here want universal health care. Then he claps back with this horrifying answer. Not sure if it's just the altitude that makes them want that, because everyone here also wants universal health care. Though that's probably because they're either some immigrant from a whole country, you okay with cursing, some obsessed thug, or some gender ideology major. We got what, racism, classism, and sexism all in one message. So this guy mentioned wanting a feminine woman in his profile. So I asked, how do you define a feminine woman? And he said, someone that has respect for themselves and doesn't subscribe to modern social norms and respects her partner, not seeking attention all the time from others. Pretty basic stuff that people understand 20 years ago, LOL. And I've been showing you guys some of the profiles of the men that I found on here. All right, let's start with this novel. Jesus is number one. I'm very masculine with traditional Christian values. Swipe accordingly. What do you get when you take a poor farm boy from an excellent Christian family in rural Alabama and run him through the Ivy Leagues, Wall Street, and a PhD? Exactly what you expect. Yet nothing like you expect. Right, here's the good stuff. My future wife believes her highest calling in life is to be a wife and mother, but her other interests and ambitions are welcome. I'm one of 5 in family to play college football. Fair warning in case being a mother to athletes doesn't sound appealing. I don't care about lots of matches or dates. I care about shared values and vision. And here are the answers to the prompts. I'm weirdly attracted to women who are even more conservative, traditional, or old-fashioned than me. It takes an incredibly strong woman to be traditional and feminine in today's culture.
Go check out her like long TikTok playlist on this. And yeah, like as you can see probably there, a lot of conservative men, like the reason you have trouble dating is pretty much described in that profile you see. Like all that like stuff you're talking about, how self-obsessed you are, talking about your achievements. And I've actually noticed this in other videos I've made about conservatives dating. Do you remember that man who was saying like, oh, I'm like 50 something, in good shape, I own my own property, blah, 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 I still can't get a date? Because they literally think, and I feel sad for some of them, they get told you get all these like achievements and a woman will just fall into your lap based on the achievements that you played like college football, you know, you got a good education and stuff. Yeah, like a lot of women like don't give a shit about that if you're actually a terrible person. And talking about the athletic stuff as well, red flag in my opinion, because it again shows that you still haven't stopped this vanity. But of course, the worst element to that is like, I expect you to be a mother to my children and just serve as my wife in a traditional role. And I guess in The Right Stuff is the place where they can just really say that, because they expect all the women in this app to be people who would be up for that. But I would even say the 10 women who sincerely signed up to The Right Stuff for dating, I would even say most of them wouldn't want to do this either. Because most women in Western countries, although they might maybe fall into this role eventually, like my own mum was a stay-at-home mum, pretty traditional role she served. We're not like really religious, it just kind of worked out that way. But if you tell women on like the first date, this is what I want from you, I'm pretty sure most British and American women like aren't going to be okay with that. And you wonder why this app wasn't doing amazing. And I think this is proved by, the Twitter page for The Right Stuff has been completely wiped because the head of it, John McEntee, joined the Heritage Foundation, like I said, to do the Project 2025 stuff. Now, before we talk about him and Project 2025, basically this guy used to be like some sort of like actual assistant to Donald Trump in terms of like carrying his stuff. And then he was forced to resign or he was fired because the FBI found out He had loads of gambling debt, which means he could probably be easily compromised by like a foreign government and stuff. But then because he was like a high school athlete, I think Donald Trump liked him and then like rehired him at the end of his presidency, and he became like really high up in the Trump administration, mainly dealing with the hiring of personnel. There's a technical term for it. It's in one of the articles. I forgot specifically. And there was another story I read where he would basically use his position to hire conservative female influencers that he could try and hook up with. Like, I'm not joking. And then also other people who worked with him just said he was like a complete idiot, basically. But because of those connections, that's why he was able to start a dating app. And it's probably why he's in the Heritage Foundation now, and it's probably why he'll be in the next Trump administration. But you guys would have probably seen him, probably most famously, is because he uses the Right Stuff's TikTok page and Instagram page as his personal social media, and it actually gets like quite a lot of engagement. It seems like this guy must have designed a dating app just to become some sort of conservative social media influencer. And also, I want to talk about this, and it's something I've been thinking about recently. Conservatives basically nearly coming around to the anti-capitalist viewpoint, right? Because the stuff they're complaining about, but they only use as critiques when their party isn't in power. Because when Donald Trump was president, which this guy served under, he would do the exact same stuff, you'd have the exact same problems, so you're just basically being a hypocrite. But I want you to like look at some of these TikToks. Obviously there's loads of like racist, transphobic, anti-vax stuff on there. Pretty par for the course of American conservatives these days. But I want to focus on these ones I just talked about.
Can you guys fix the roads we pay taxes for? Best we can do is paint rainbows on them. You need to buy medical insurance. Why? I'm healthy. Because if something happens to you, you'll have to spend thousands of dollars. But the insurance is thousands of dollars. Trust us, it's worth it if something happens. Okay, something happened. Can you pay? No. You need to spend $20,000 first. So banks can go crazy if you owe them $1. But when they crash the entire financial market and request $100 billion, that's totally chill. I can't afford a home. I don't feel safe. Groceries are way too expensive. My entire neighborhood is filled with homeless people. Best I can do is ban TikTok. Always get the extra side of orange chicken, just in case. Imagine being one of our politicians. You steal everyone's money and still end up $35 trillion in debt. If we need illegal aliens to do the jobs Americans won't do, who did all these jobs before we had illegal aliens?
So in my opinion, this guy might feel this way about some of these things, but it's clear he's trying to appeal to like Gen Z people on TikTok who might feel this way about their government because, yeah, you're talking about medical insurance. You worked for Donald Trump, who tried to even destroy Obamacare, which already was a very corporatized form of healthcare. So what's your solution to medical insurance, right? So in this guy's case, he's saying it's a scam, and I would agree. But is Donald Trump going to pass universal health care when he's the president that you formerly worked under and you'll probably work for again? No? So what is the actual solution? I bet people like this just say, yeah, don't use medical insurance and maybe some BS pseudoscience will see you through most of your life healthy. But for most people, when you get older, you're going to need help from the government's like medical programs, and what's going to happen then? And even he was talking about like, you know, all these problems under Biden, but they just banned TikTok. Again, all those problems exist under Donald Trump as well. What's the actual solution? Yeah, the US government is terrible for not doing that, but that's because the system is terrible, right? Because your president did that as well. And even the thing about he calls them illegal aliens, talking about illegal immigrants to the US doing jobs no one wants to do, is just so funny to me, because obviously he's coming at it from a xenophobic talking point. But if you want to talk about it economically, why do rich people love illegal immigrants working at their businesses, including Donald Trump? Because you can pay them less. It's pretty simple, isn't it? Because they come from poorer countries and the wages are still better from the stuff they earn back home, so they're willing to do harder jobs with terrible working conditions, and loads of the US economy is actually propped up by this labor. So the answer of why so many undocumented immigrants do jobs that Americans used to do is because the capitalist class want to save even more money and exploit cheaper labor, the same way they moved so many domestic jobs abroad just to save themselves more money. And even talking about bank bailouts, like Donald Trump gave the biggest tax break to the rich ever, and you're talking about bank bailouts like you disagree with them? Like, come on. It's just like, obviously, we know Donald Trump faux populism, but even now, he's not even doing that shit anymore. That's like the 2016 Donald Trump who might say shit like that to try and get into the White House. Now they just say absolutely unhinged shit all the time. Both candidates, to be fair, but Donald Trump more. But this guy is going to be in the Trump White House again, likely, if they keep running with Joe Biden. Now, he is still posting a lot on his social media accounts because wants to make these stupid sketches where he eats food all the time. Of course, yeah, like I said, he has loads of like really racist, xenophobic, anti-vax, all that shit on there as well. But I've covered that more in the last video. But the Heritage Foundation posted this last year. So former PPO director John McEntee joins Project 2025. So they say the former director of the White House Presidential Personal Office in the Trump administration is joining the 2025 Presidential Transition Project as a senior advisor. He will play a vital role supporting the personnel pillar of Project 2025, embracing the motto that personnel is policy. Project 2025 is launching the database to collect resumes and vet thousands of potential applicants in advance of January 20th, 2025, when the next president takes office. Organised by Heritage, Project 2025 is more than 50 of the nation's leading conservative groups joining forces to make sure the next conservative president is ready on day one. Paul Dans, director of Project 2025 and former chief of staff at the US Office of Personnel Management, said the 47th president must and will confront the deep state and return to John McEntee to do so. We're thrilled he's joined the project to ensure the next president is ready. So if you guys haven't heard of what Project 2025 is, let me outline it for you from a Guardian report. So Project 2025 details across more than 900 pages how Trump and his allies could dismantle and disrupt the US government. It suggests ridding the federal ranks of many appointed roles and stacking agencies instead with more political appointees aligned with and more beholden to Trump's policy prescriptions. Led by the Heritage Foundation, the project showcases a federal government that cracks down intensely on immigration, LGBT, diminishes environmental protections, overhauls financial policy, and takes aggressive action against China. So there's loads of like different things you can see online, just like graphics of what they want to do. And Joe Biden said today, Google Project 2025. If you look into it, it's basically what groups like the Koch brothers have always wanted, just a massive deregulation of the US government, but also combined with more conservative values influenced by religion, so cracking down on LGBT rights. And obviously it's like bizarre that the guy I've showed you who ran this terrible dating app is going to be like so involved with this basic move to fascism by the US government. But one thing I want to say about this is, of course, like, you know, Donald Trump's next presidency is obviously terrible for the world. I'll say that. Like, I don't want it to happen personally. I'm most worried for me about potential conflicts around the world and, of course, the environmental destruction caused by the US and the further deregulation of the environmental agency.
This TikToker has destroyed his life with awful videos like this.
Friday, CBS.
This is Jermaine, and he has become slightly infamous on the internet for essentially doing exactly what we saw over and over again.
Hey, rest in peace, Pop Smoke.
And he just went from these countless stupid stunts to then later on pivoting to gambling vlogs. He's essentially lost a decade of his life chasing internet fame in the worst way possible, and his decisions have left him bankrupt with nothing to show for other than hundreds of videos showing a misled man chasing internet fame. Originally, as you just saw, his claim to fame was getting retail jobs and creating absolute chaos for his fellow employees to clean up. But naturally, that didn't last too long because he ran out of jobs and the internet got bored with it. But when that attention phased out, he became desperate again. This whole time he's been vlogging on his YouTube channel. So he then started to share that he is an extreme gambling addict and has jumped from minimum wage job to minimum wage job, but was currently struggling to get a new job. But finally, he got one at Subway. And instead of using that job to provide himself with, a little bit of security while maybe going to community college or doing anything to increase his earning potential, get this, he decided to film a rap music video at the restaurant.
Chance, my $20 loss turned to 50 grand. If you never faced addiction, you won't comprehend.
And to make things worse, this is how he tried to promote it. Excuse me, what are you doing? Buddy, really? But that wasn't it. He had another trick up his sleeve. He tried to get Meek Mill's attention with this.
At Meek Mill. Tell Meek Mill to sign me the Dream. At Meek Mill. Let him know. I'm trying to get signed to Dream Chasers. All this Subway, all of this Subway, bro. At Meek Mill, man. Let him know. I'm trying to sign the Dream Chasers, bro.
Talk about destroying your life with literally zero upside. So I'm sure the question you have is, did he finally blow up and get his rap career off the ground? Absolutely not. Because let's be real, the only thing you should be rapping in Subway are the subs. Obviously, he was fired and ended up job searching again, found a new job and continued vlogging his life. And sadly for him, it was going nowhere. He continued gambling aggressively in the worst way possible, and I guess started this whole gambling vlog arc. And this thing is just, it's horrifying to watch. It is brutal. I feel like the only thing positive with this series is it really shows you the real unfiltered experience of a gambling addict, not some paid influencer shilling a lifestyle that's funding by gambling referral codes. That's the big difference here, because the sad reality is most of these top streamers on Kick promoting gambling sites nonstop, they're essentially funded by addict gamblers like Jermaine. So here's his, I guess, first unofficial vlog series where we see him trying to cope with a $200 loss.
At the casino, just lost $200, but I'm about to get some Subway, so make myself feel a little bit better.
I guess the one common theme is he stuck with Subway regardless of trashing it for content in the past. But hey, something that's infinitely less depressing than this is the nostalgic toy car mats. And a few years back, when I was searching for a backdrop for this channel, I realized you can't get the good original ones anymore. The reason I have this toy car mat behind me is I call myself a low-budget talk show. And all these mainstream talk shows, they have these extremely expensive city skylines as backdrops. And that's not obtainable for me. So my obtainable way of getting a city skyline behind me is the nostalgic toy car mats. But they don't sell the original anymore. So I decided to take inspiration from that and build a company called Mat City, where we take nostalgic toy car mats and bring it to a city near you. So we have New York City, LA, DC, Chicago, Boston, and many more soon to drop alongside of the moon and Mars. Look at that. We got LA here. We also have the moon here as well. We also did a winter rally / snow collection, and Santa's North Pole Village, which is currently available for a limited time of only this December. And then on top of that, we also do mouse mats in all sizes, because as soon as I saw some of our designs on the large mat, I was like, I need my setup to look like this as well. So hey, if you want one, you can grab one at mat.city, which will be in the link in the top of the description down below and in the pinned comment. If you decide to do so, thank you so much, because it really does support the channel. But without further ado, let's continue this absolute downward spiral. Because after losing the $200, he then walks around the casino upset with himself and disgusted that he lost so much money. So instead of quitting or going, all right, that's not for me, maybe I'll come back again next year or something like that, try my luck, like any normal person, he turns this into a vlog series.
What's up, it's Jumani. I'm on my way to the casino. I had $200 and, let's see what happens. About to go with a little two-piece. Nothing serious, $200, but I'm gonna make one bet. My first bet is gonna be a $20 bet. If it hits, I'm gonna be $50 in profit, and if I do hit my first bet, I'm gonna cash out and leave and go to the bank. So just letting y'all know ahead of time.
Oh boy, what do we think happens here? This is a terrible setup. But he then goes to one of the worst machines possible and bets in the dumbest way possible. Not only is he gambling at a casino, but he's also severely reducing his odds of winning with what and how he's playing.
Thank you.
Again, if this hits, I'm gonna cash out. That's gonna be $50 profit, and I'm gonna go to the bank. So let's see what happens. Alright, so I'm about to start playing.
Are we really surprised that happened? But he does hit and goes into an $84 profit. The only problem here is that's not the whole story, because he's clearly overall in a massive net negative.
On that last hit, I profited $84. So that's what that hit was. And again, I came in with $100 bill. So I'm about to deposit this $84 into my bank account, and I'm gonna explain why I'm kind of doing what I'm doing. So as of right now, my bank account is overdrafted $956.38. This probably will get returned by sometime today, but I'm gonna deposit the $84 in my account, and I just, you know what I mean? Like I said, I'm a compulsive gambler, bro. I've made so many poor choices in my life, but I'm about to go to the bank right now and deposit money into my account and try to, let's see, I'm trying to see if I can make $1,000 today, but I'm gonna do it slowly.
Oh, dude. So he's trying to turn $200 into $950 to just break even in one day. Gambling. Buddy, pack it up. Never gamble again. This is just going to siphon so much money out of you. It already has. The amount of money it's taken out of your life is insane. And if you just keep doing this, it's just going to get worse and worse. Because, as expected, in part 2, he lost all $200, with his final bet being a Hail Mary to hit one single number in roulette. So he's really playing against his own odds here.
All right, $10 on 10. If that doesn't hit, that's it. I just lost $200. All right, that's it for the vlog. Through the struggles.
So, did he take this as a sign from the universe to pack it up and quit? Absolutely not. I mean, the dude lives his life kind of like that diamond mining meme, because he thinks he's right about to strike gold every single time. Because once he managed to re-up his bank account to zero, not positive, just he broke to zero. He broke even. He immediately goes and overdrafts it again and just continues the same cycle.
My feelings are hurt. I had to overdraft my bank account to go to the casino. I only had $2.89 in my account, and now I just overdrafted, and it's negative $97.11.
Buddy, come on, dude. And again, he loses almost everything in the casino and leaves the casino like this.
All right, I'm leaving the casino. I have about, I think $19. I'm gonna walk out with $19 just so I don't look that bad.
Dude, you don't look good here. This looks like an absolute nightmare. He is living, I would assume, everyone's nightmare here. I wouldn't wish this on anyone. And this behavior just goes on for over a year, and it just gets so much worse.
Oh my gosh. I can't make this stuff up. This is through the struggles. I literally gambled my braces away. When I think about it, all the money I had within the last 3 months that I gambled and lost, I could have paid off my braces. That's crazy. I made choices. I gotta live with them. Made my bed. I gotta lay in it. keep it real with you. I don't think I'm gonna make it out of this struggle. I don't see it happening right now.
I understand he feels completely defeated, but it's still 100% within his control to get out of the struggle. It definitely will not be easy, but it's still very possible. I mean, actually, what would you guys even do? Let's do some groupthink here in the comments. Okay, B. Jermaine, you're cooked. Your life is absolutely destroyed from your own actions. You're probably in like $70,000 worth of debt, gambling debt. You're not very hireable due to your constant clout chasing over the last 7 years. And you don't have a lot of motivation in life. Then on top of that, you're still addicted to gambling to the point where you just keep on overdrafting your account and you do even more desperate stuff, which we'll get into later on in this video. So the only thing I can think of that will actually help him is offshore. He needs to be offshore. You can't go to the casino if you're on a boat in the middle of nowhere, right? And I'm talking to like a fishing boat. I'm not saying like go to a cruise liner because they have casinos. He needs a deep sea fishing job. Perks of being on a deep sea fishing boat: free rent while he's on the boat, high pay, somewhat interesting day, so he can vlog it for his vlogs. He can keep vlogging. That's what he wants to do. He will also get the camaraderie of the other guys on the boat. I think he really needs that social interaction because he seems extremely isolated in his vlogs. And then of course, his story will probably be hilarious for some old fishermen. But obviously, I am completely spitballing here as I clearly have zero knowledge of how to get a deep sea fishing job. What I do know is though, I grew up in a small town in Norway, and some of the crash outs I know in my city, they became deep sea fishermen and they turned their life around completely. So I'm just going off of what I have seen has worked for other people before. Now, it wasn't gambling problems, it was substance problems, but being out on a boat, you know, isolates you from that. So I think that could actually be helpful. But I don't know. I mean, like, I'm just trying to think, like, dude, he is cooked. I am trying to give him a smidge of hope here because it's depressing. Like, I don't want to see someone struggle like this. But I also realize that is life. I mean, this guy is doing all of this to himself. But I feel like it is actually an interesting thought experiment. So out of everyone who's watching my channel here, I mean, just looking at my demographics, we are from all walks of life here, from a whole bunch of different countries. So please let me know in the comments down below what you think his best route would be, because I feel like there'll be some interesting comments. Because see, then we won't only be dunking on him in the comments, we'll actually be like a little bit helpful and share some of that Christmas spirit. Because I am actually recording this on Christmas morning before my family gets up, before I go spend Christmas for them. So Merry Christmas, guys. So I'm just trying to share some Christmas spirit here because as of right now, things have gotten so bad for this guy that he is constantly opening new credit cards, going to the Apple store, buying a brand new iPad. Then he would take this iPad to a pawn shop, pawn it for half of what it's worth, then go back to the casino with that money, lose that money, and then he's out double. It's like he's double hurting himself financially. Like this is so painful to watch that something needs to happen here. I think we need a fishing boat involved here. He needs to get placed as far away from a casino and or pawn shop as humanly possible. And I think a deep sea fishing boat would be the best alternative for him. Like, it's funny to joke about, but also like, I can't think of a better option. Well, I mean, it's safe to say if you want to absolutely obliterate your finances, you can just follow Jermaine's guide that he's put out on his YouTube and TikTok channels on how to live his life. Please do not follow his footsteps. If you have any love for yourself, never do that to yourself. Not only to yourself, if you have any love for yourself or your loved ones, don't do that, because this is just a sure way to completely destroy yourself financially and emotionally destroy your loved ones who do not want to see you in a position like this. But all of his vlogs are essentially just him complaining about how bad his life is for sympathy, clicks, and donations. Then he does absolutely nothing to improve his life. Like, not too long ago, he even pulled this, like, Meek Mill card again.
At Meek Mill. Tell him to save me, bro. I'm in the trenches right now. I promise I'll stop clout chasing. I don't want to be a heathen, bro. I'm done being a heathen. It's been 5 years and I'm still in the trenches, bro. I can't save myself. Just came back from the casino, lost everything. Yo, Meek, if you see this, bro, save me, bro.
Dude, what is Meek Mill going to do for you? You are the only one that can save yourself, Jermaine. But it's safe to say, like, if he continues down the same path and continues to be stuck in the past, venting to his vlogs that if he did this and this different and his life would be so different if he just didn't do this, he's going to be stuck forever. Because in reality, what he has to do is he has to say enough is enough. Like, he needs to ban himself from going to a casino ever again. He can't go. It's not in the cards for him. He cannot gamble in a healthy way. He needs to find any job that will take him, learn any skill or trade that can increase his income potential, so he can return to living a life that's actually pleasant to live. Like, the dude needs to become accountable for his own actions rather than just moan about them on his vlog. And I realize he does this on his vlog because this is a way he gets money. But those vlogs could do without the gambling because that just really sets him back infinitely more than what he makes off of his TikTok. He also just spends so much of his time moaning about getting zero women, to the point where one of his jobs, he worked at a Motel 6 and he sat at the front desk and he vlogged about how he kept seeing people, you know, bringing women home to this Motel 6, and he was envious of that. He was even envious of the ones paying for it. So it's just like, dude, get your shit together. Take care of yourself physically and financially, and get yourself into a position where you can actually take care of someone emotionally and financially. You need to add some value into someone's life, or else they're not going to want to be with you. Nobody wants to date a charity case. So I'm thinking here, deep sea fishing. It'll add some dad lore to his life. It'll hopefully sharpen him. Get him as far away from the casinos as possible, make him some money. He lives for free on the boat. He'll be able to pay off his debt, not quick, but like, you know, faster than his current rate. And then the camaraderie. I think like he needs social interaction in his life. That's like, just watching his vlog, this dude is isolated, and it seems like his human interaction he gets on literally from the bus or at the casino. And even at the casino, like, he gambles at the freaking like tablets. He's not interacting with humans. So he's playing the freaking games that are like giving way worse odds as well. Like, I don't know, the whole thing is just a disaster. While many of his actions are laughably stupid, there is definitely some entertainment value there. It's definitely gone on for way too long, but it's just depressing at this point, and I really hope he finds some help and actually has the will to want to turn his life around. So hopefully his vlog can end up turning for the better, and he doesn't spend the rest of his life essentially being down bad. But if you're a loved one or currently dealing with gambling addiction, please seek help, as your life will be so much better once you break that terrible habit. And obviously you have the mainstream US help number right here, but there's also plenty of other free resources, and I really encourage you getting help if you need it. But if you do have your together financially, we've got some cool mats over at Mad.City, baby. Feel free to check them out in the link down below or in the description down below. Do I feel bad for that segue? Kinda. But other than that, I really hope you guys have a wonderful Christmas. Thank you guys for a wonderful year. I mean, this has just been phenomenal. I've been doing this full time for probably since 2016, so 8 years now, and I'm very blessed. Thank you guys so much for a wonderful year. I'm excited to just be making infinitely more content next year. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, and for those of you guys who don't celebrate, I still wish you guys the best for the New Year's.
Don't talk about ending the genocide. I want to talk about how wrong you are in the idea that people can live side by side with each other. So that's what Ethan is doing. That's the strategy that he uses to
1984 is about capitalism.
That is laughable. It is expressly about the Soviet Union.
No, it's not expressly about the Soviet Union. You can apply it to the Soviet Union because the Soviet Union was a totalitarian regime, but it's not expressly about the Soviet Union. It's a general takedown of totalitarianism and the systems that support totalitarianism. Oh my God. Dude, Ethan has such an issue with socialism. It's so funny. Yeah, we're just going to start off from where we left yesterday. Let's just do a quick little recap. Essentially, Ethan was mad at Hassan for watching a Comrade Casey video and said that Hassan was misrepresenting his position when Hassan was saying that, oh, what is Ethan Klein going to say next? That there's a Palestinian Supreme Court justice on the Israeli Supreme Court as a defense of saying Israel doesn't have an apartheid state. And Ethan's like, that's so dishonest. I can't believe that he would put those words in my mouth. And yeah, so we realized that Ethan was defending the idea that there was no segregation yesterday. That was the context of the video. And then he's like, I'm just saying that there's the fact that there's 20% of the population is Palestinian. He's so dishonest. So let's just pick it up from where we left off.
You know, 1984 was written about the USSR and about how the communist way is like dependent on forcing doublethink and convincing the people that reality isn't reality. This like extraordinary brainwashing and rewriting of history. Hassan does that. It's kind of nuts.
Oh my God. Ethan is so funny. He's like, Hassan does that. That's the extent of his analysis. 1984 is a book that talks about bad things. Hassan does that. Okay, let's see if he'll come up with examples.
And over time, he played victim, claiming that people calling him a Zionist are...
Let me DM love my picture of my cock. Hey, AB, don't you hate yourself? You're self-hating Arab, dude. What the fuck's wrong with you?
So I don't know too much about this guy, Comrade Casey, but people are saying that Comrade Casey should sue Ethan for defamation. Apparently, Ethan was joking when he said Comrade Casey sent an explicit picture to that producer on his show. Apparently, that was a joke. He didn't actually send any explicit pictures to Love. Ethan was just joking about that. But then, did he call AB a self-hating Arab, or did he Photoshop Love's face onto the body of a Hamas fighter? I don't know. If you have real grievances with this person and you're saying that he's an unhinged person who's been harassing you and your producers, why are you interspersing ironic, sarcastic jokes in with the real stuff? When I was listening to this, I seriously thought that Comrade Casey might have sent that picture to Love. It is confusing, but once again, this is what really hurts Ethan's seriousness in my eyes, where he's incapable of making a serious point without inserting childish humor. Once again, I'll go back to the example during Halloween when his producer was talking about how he saw a guy dress up as a Nazi, and Ethan said, oh, that must have been Dan Clance. It's like everything you do is tainted with an unseriousness that you bring to the show.
Can I get a fucking job, please? Can I get a job? Can I get a job? You're such a fucking clown, dude.
Clown Rad Casey?
Holy shit.
It's been suggested.
We could do better. Creep Brad Casey. Love, I sent you a picture of my cock. Can you send one back?
People in the chat saying that...
Whoa, that's vulgar.
There's people in the chat saying you're wrong about 1984 being about Stalinism.
I'm actually 100% true, and I hate to tell it to you, it's about Stalinism almost entirely.
It's not. It's about totalitarianism. It's just a general like control from the government. That's what it's about. It's not about like a specific country in a point of time. There's a reason why 1984 is still talked about today. It's still applicable today because a lot of the ideas are just about totalitarianism. I don't know. It's kind of funny.
I think people get confused because Orwell was a socialist, but he was deeply critical of the USSR. But
yeah, being a socialist.
It's not really. I don't think that's that controversial.
Was he It's known. Just look it up. It's known. It was mostly about the USSR. Obvious if you've actually read the fucking book.
Yes, he was a socialist though. He was a pretty devoted one. He went and fought on the socialist side in the Spanish Civil War. He fought against the fascists and against the Nazis. And a lot of tankies don't like him because of his criticism of the USSR. And he famously informed on a lot of pro-USSR circles in the UK. So they like straight up see him as like a traitor.
People don't want to believe it. Just literally look up, do like one molecule of research.
1984.
Holy crap. Okay, so now once again, Ethan is attacking socialists. Ethan, I don't know, it's funny. It's like he has an issue with Hassan for being pro-Palestine. He has an issue with Hassan for being socialist. He'll attack socialism.
Nobody wages war against socialists better than Ethan Glein from the H3 podcast.
Fact that Dan was a socialist. He doesn't like the fact that he's surrounded by all of these socialists. It's like, I'm a progressive, but I'm like a liberal capitalist person. Once again, it's not a criticism of socialism. It's a criticism of totalitarianism and top-down control of the government over the media and over people's lives. That's what 1984 is a criticism over. And I just think it's hilarious that Ethan is thinking that he's going to do media analysis on 1984 when he can't even understand like a single point that Hassan makes and is able to incorporate that into his mind and then repeat it back to his audience. Ethan has extremely poor media comprehension skills. One of my favorite like sound bites to come out of this whole Ethan versus Hassan situation was a year ago in November 2023, where Ethan was talking with Hassan and he's getting all sad and crying because Hassan's saying that from the river to the sea isn't anti-Semitic and that there should be a one-state solution rather than a two-state solution. solution. And then Ethan says, well, I feel like I'm giving so much ground to you and I'm always conceding points. Why can't you concede any points to me? Dude, you literally made a podcast with Hassan, and the premise of the podcast was you're a dumbass and Hassan is the political expert that's going to be correcting you in a funny way. You get to just be a dumbass and say funny, irreverent things, whereas Hassan kind of holds down the boat and is able to kind of correct all of the things that you do. And now you're crying that Hassan isn't making any kind of concessions towards your position, when the whole premise of the show and the episode that you were doing is that he's going to be educating you on things. It's so funny. And like, I think he's gotten it into his head at this point in time that he is an expert on these issues. And the idea that he's defending that Yoav Gallant is a moderate in the Israeli government, a moderating voice in Netanyahu's cabinet, and he got fired because he was that moderating voice. And he's defending his wife because she's saying he's a good guy. And instead of saying, okay, I got called out on that by Hassan, I got called out on that by my community, I'm going to apologize. No, he doubles down and he says, I'm the expert on these things. You guys don't understand. You guys are misrepresenting Yoav Gallant's position. It's like, no, dude, you're just actually stupid. And now when he's talking about 1984, it's actually an anti-socialist book. I mean, Ethan conflating socialism with the Soviet Union, right? Not understanding that it's not specifically against socialism, it's just against any kind of form of totalitarianism. Not able to understand that. And yeah, he does have like a super inflated ego. And I think it's one thing if Ethan is able to find clips on YouTubers and have this fun kind of content court drama show that he's doing. It's a completely other thing when he's finding clips on political matters and he finds a single article of saying that Yoav Gallant was a thorn in Netanyahu's side for trying to do Netanyahu's extremism. And then he uses that single article, that clip of information, to say that Yoav Gallant is a moderating force now. And that's just a completely different thing. You can poke fun at YouTubers' careers and other internet personalities' careers and lives with the things they've done, and you can clip jump them, but it actually takes a lot more dedication to do political analysis. And Ethan Klein has shown a real willingness to not do any kind of work that is required to do that kind of political analysis. It's been a while since I read 1984, but isn't there like 3 main like government corporations that everyone works at? Isn't that kind of the idea of 1984? There's like the information bureaucracy where Winston works, and then there's like, I don't know, like the meat packing plant or something like that. Isn't that kind of the idea of it? Like, it is kind of poking fun at this like top-down, almost corporate bureaucracy capitalist system, because it is like a monopolized system and everyone's lives are the worst because of it.
It's funny, the socialists are like, no, it's not about...
Bro, George Orwell was a fucking socialist. He wrote Animal Farm too. Dude, oh my god, Ethan's like, no, 1984 is supporting capitalism. It's laughable if you think it's anti-capitalism.
Look, dude, like one molecule.
1984 is about capitalism.
That is laughable. It is expressly about the Soviet Union, and it's not.
No, it's not expressly about the Soviet Union. You can apply it to the Soviet Union because the Soviet Union was a totalitarian regime, but it's not expressly about the Soviet Union. It's a general takedown of totalitarianism and the systems that support totalitarianism. Oh my god, dude, Ethan has such an issue with socialism. It's so funny. It's interesting to me because he came into this Hassan attack. He came into attacking Hassan by saying that Hassan is he's too pro-Palestine. In his fervor to support Palestine, he is haphazardly hurting Jewish people. He's hurting Jewish people's feelings, essentially, and especially like Jewish Israelis' feelings. So he came into this saying that Hassan is too pro-Palestine and he doesn't have enough nuance in this. But then he started attacking Hassan's takes on China, Hassan's takes on Russia, and now his takes on socialism and American imperialism in general. There was that whole thing where he was saying that Hassan isn't being sufficiently pro-Democrat enough. He didn't explicitly endorse Kamala Harris, even though Hassan said, I am going to vote. I'm not going to vote third party, and I'm not going to vote for Donald Trump. Hassan is pretty clearly encouraging his chat to vote for Kamala Harris. But Ethan is like, if you don't find me the soundbite, then it didn't happen, and I can blame Hassan for Kamala Harris's loss. I mean, that's just hilarious. And now he's attacking Hassan's socialism. He's saying Hassan is 1984. 1984 1984 is actually about Hassan, and 1984 is an anti-socialist book. Capitalism is correct. So it's like Ethan has this kind of wound, and this wound is that Hassan is fundamentally different than Ethan. Hassan has fundamentally different politics than Ethan. Ethan is a liberal at the end of the day. He's a self-proclaimed capitalist. He's a self-proclaimed apartheid enjoyer. He doesn't like the genocide. I want to be completely fair to Ethan. He does not like the genocide that Israel is doing, but he does enjoy the apartheid that Israel exists under. He has said that he wants Palestinians to be oppressed for 50 years, and then if they're perfect little oppressed victims, then maybe the Israeli Jews can give them their freedom, and there can be one person, one vote. But we can't give them one person, one vote, because if they ever outnumber the Jewish people in Israel, even by one vote, then they're going to pass legislation that's going to fuck over the Jews, because the Jews have been fucked over in all aspects of society. And so if the Palestinians get that majority, then they are going to screw over the Jewish people. So that's like a racist idea right there, and he just supports apartheid. So yeah, he has these fundamentalists, he has these fundamental differences with Hassan. He is a capitalist, Hassan's a socialist. He is pro-apartheid, Hassan's anti-apartheid. He is a little racist to Muslims. Hassan, I mean, he's kind of culturally Muslim. It's just gross. So it's interesting because it's like Ethan started this attack on Hassan because of Hassan's Palestinian advocacy, but it's revealed so many more differences that he's had with Hassan that he's like hasn't had, let's just be honest, the balls to really speak up against Hassan. When he was doing the podcast with Hassan, he went over all of these differences with Hassan. He went over the differences on Tibet. He went over the differences on Crimea. He went over the differences in socialism versus capitalism. He even went over the differences of apartheid with Israel. And Hassan was able to explain his position and correct Ethan's misconceptions every single time. And Ethan would always say, okay, you did a good job of explaining it. I get it now. And then he would kind of retreat back to his little shell. Or if he wasn't willing to do that, he would say, all right, this is just boring to the audience. Let's move on. And Hassan's like, well, I just want to make sure that like you get it, right? And Ethan would be like, whatever. Who gives a fuck? I mean, he'd kind of shut down. And so this attacking of Hassan over his like being too pro-Palestine advocacy position has really allowed Ethan to air out all of these grievances that he has been hiding since the days of Leftovers. So I think that Ethan has been more anti-Semitic than Hassan, honestly. Ethan has insisted that being pro-Israel, pro-apartheid is the Jewish position. That is extremely anti-Semitic because you are basically saying that Jews are a monolithic group and you are ascribing this genocidal position to all Jewish people, and you're almost using Jewish people as a shield for your own positions. And then he also will ascribe Jewishness to people when it suits his purposes, and he'll strip away Jewishness to people when it doesn't suit his purposes. So for example, that whole Arab tier list with Frogan, he'll say that it was all anti-Semitic, and he'll ignore the fact that there was a Jewish person there, and there were Jewish people that weren't in the bottom tier, and there were also people in the bottom tier that weren't Jewish. But for his purposes, everyone that was in the bottom tier was Jewish, and everyone in the top tier was Arab. That is anti-Semitic. That is flattening the differences that Jewish people actually exhibit. When he says that people that are pro-Palestine, that are Jewish people, are just tokens, and if you want me to talk to a pro-Palestinian Jewish person, you're being anti-Semitic because you have this pre-approved list of Jewish people. You have your token Jew to try to say that you're not anti-Semitic, not really understanding or recognizing the idea that you can be Jewish and against apartheid, and it actually is honoring your Jewish traditions and ancestry by being against apartheid and by being against genocide, because the Jewish people have been persecuted for their entire existence, and they've been like historically famously gone through a genocide. And so what better way to honor your Jewish ancestry by being against the genocide? It's so funny to me too, where he will strip away Jewishness from people when it doesn't suit his needs. And there's that clip of him that I'll keep coming back to where he said Karl Marx wasn't a Jew, he was a communist. And it's so funny. It's like, yeah, Karl Marx wasn't a Jew, he's a communist. You can't be a Jewish person and a communist at the same time. Don't talk about ending the genocide. I want to talk about how wrong you are in the idea that people can live side by side with each other. So that's what Ethan is doing. That's the strategy that he uses to discredit pro-Palestinian voices. They'll say, don't talk about ending the genocide. What you're advocating for down the line is so unhinged because people hate each other right now. So why are we even talking about that? There's that clip of him that I'll keep coming back to where he said Karl Marx wasn't a Jew, he was a communist. And it's so funny. It's like, yeah, Karl Marx wasn't a Jew, he's a communist. You can't be a Jewish person and a communist at the same time.
This like social structure, the brainwashing, the power, the control over the people. It's about autocracy. It's about
that's the thing. I think it's about capitalism as insofar as threads of authoritarianism can run through a socialist or capitalist society. So it's not that controversial to say that. I'm surprised to have seen people saying that that's not true.
Wait, what is his chat saying? Is his chat actually talking about 1984?
Can run through a socialist or capitalist society. So,
bro, you didn't understand the book. 1984 is indeed about the USSR. What? He feared capitalism. Capitalism being bad doesn't make communism good. Have some effing nuance. That's true. He was a socialist, but criticized communism. Of course, it's about Stalin. LOL. It's so obvious. Yes, it's 100% a criticism of Stalinism and totalitarianism, not communism. It's a criticism of the structures of totalitarian power. It's not expressly about any one specific governance, and that's why he wrote like a fantasy book that can be applied to any kind of situation rather than just writing about a guy who's living in the USSR.
One of the most disturbing books ever written, especially as you get older and you really understand how something like that could happen. But yeah, George Orwell was a real one, and even as a socialist, he looked at Stalinism, which people today still fucking think is based, probably including Hassan, who wouldn't go as far as to be like, yeah, I'm pro-Stalin, but like, let's be real, he fucking loves Russia and he loves China and he loves all these tanky scumbags whose show he appears on, like Second Thought, First Thought, whatever the first brain.
Bro, you literally had Lonerbox on your show who says Israel is not committing a genocide and he defends Israel snipers for shooting little babies in the head. So I wouldn't criticize Hassan based off of the shows that he goes on or the people he appears with, because you brought on a genocide defender and said that he's the better alternative to Hassan. Don't criticize Hassan for going on to Second Thought when you fucking brought Lonerbox on. I mean, dude, Ethan didn't just appear on Lonerbox's stream or just had Lonerbox show up and talk about stuff for a while and then kick him off. He specifically brought Lonerbox on to say he's a better alternative to Hassan, so you should watch Lonerbox. It's mind-boggling, man. So yeah, is Hassan pro-Russia? Is he pro-China? No, there's like no evidence of that. Did he say that Russia annexing Crimea isn't colonization? Yeah, he said that, but he has backtracked on that at this point in time and said that it was colonization and that it was made easier due 100%. To the steps that Russia took by like ethnically displacing the people of Crimea and sending in Russians and then having a tighter hold on it economically and making them do a referendum. All of that stuff made it easier for Russia to annex Crimea. So yeah, Hassan has recognized that Russia used colonial tactics to annex the section of Crimea. I don't know. I think Hassan could criticize China for more, but what fucking criticisms has Ethan done? Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that you can be critical of China for, and Hassan really is not pro-China. The only thing that he said is that China took over Tibet and stopped their like slavery system, which to be honest, I need to do more research into that, but on its face isn't that bad, and I can see there being a reason to criticize him for that, because I think that their subsequent treatment of the people of Tibet has been very poor, and you can argue that they should not be annexing Tibet. There's a difference between freeing the people there and annexing it and then like subjugating them and oppressing them. I think there's a difference there, and I think that you can open up China for criticism there, and I think you can criticize Hassan for being kind of uncritical of China in that situation. Like, it's kind of the same thing that Ethan did, where Ethan said, all I'm saying is that 20% of the population of Israel is Palestinian. That's just a fact. Why are people getting mad at me about that? Well, he failed to mention that the reason he was saying that was to try to show that there is no segregation in Israel, which is insane to do. It's the same thing with Hassan. If Hassan's saying, well, all I'm saying is that there was a slavery system in Tibet before China came and took it over. Well, the wider context is that China came and oppressed the people, and these people still are getting oppressed and tortured. If you're going to say that, you should also say that what China's doing now is not good either. If you're only showing one half of the situation, you're making it seem like it was a good thing that that China came and took it over, but you're not showing like the before and after. So yeah, I think there's valid criticisms of Hassan for some of the things he said about China, but Ethan's not going to make these criticisms. Ethan doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. He's saying that Hassan is pro-China and pro-Russia, and Hassan is a tanky. My understanding is that a tanky is, their whole politics is America bad, and they want to build up kind of a counterbalance to America in China and in Russia. They see China and Russia as kind of like the opposite side of global power, and everything that China and Russia has that is a win over America is a good thing, because America is the source of all evil. And I think that's like a really stupid way of looking at it. Like, America has a lot of power, true. Just because America has a lot of power doesn't inherently make everything America does bad. I think you should take the actions that America does as they come and say, is this action that America did good or bad? And obviously, the fact that America has more power, it makes the things that they do that's bad that much worse, because it's harder to stop them. So there is kind of an issue there that it's not really a democracy. It's kind of like, this world is kind of a dictatorship right now. But it just means that like people like me who are Americans, who are living in the imperial core, need to do that much more work to try to affect change, to kind of reduce the bad things America does as much as possible and increase the good that America does as much as possible. Effectively, tankies are fascist because they support fascist countries like Russia and like China, which I think it's fair to call Russia and China fascist. But I mean, then again, America's kind of a fascist country at this point, so basically, if you support any government uncritically at this point, you are kind of a fascist. You're at least a liberal. But yeah, that's kind of just the category that you will inherently fall into if you support America uncritically, China uncritically, or Russia uncritically. You're kind of gonna end up being a fascist.
God, that guy first thought is such a dumbass. Anyway, I'll get to that. He's basically doing Stalinist brainwashing tactics here. And also the big part of it was
Northstar Radio in chat. We got a celebrity in here. I've never sent any crew members explicit photos. I've never called AB a self-hating Arab. In fact, I've told r/H3 Snark to leave AB alone several times, and I've also never asked for a job at H3. So yeah, Northstar, like, that's kind of why I wanted to talk to you, because Ethan's saying all of these things, and I was scrolling through his Reddit, and his Reddit is like, I can't believe people are taking this seriously. Ethan was obviously being sarcastic in this situation. They were saying Ethan was being sarcastic when he said, you send love explicit pictures, and I'm like, it didn't seem sarcastic to me. He said these other things multiple times, like you did do these unhinged things. And people are like, even in your comment section, I left you a comment on your video that you made, and people are like, I've seen your DMs. I'm not surprised that you're saying you're lonely, like, sarcastically. Like, what is going on? He's trying to paint you like this unhinged stalker that's in love with all of his producers and stuff, and in love with him and obsessed with him. And it's like, you've made 2 videos on the subject so far and watched his show, and he's mad that you're a fan of his podcast that has like 2.5 million subscribers. So I was just confused. Your videos seem very measured and well thought out. It doesn't seem like unhinged. Like, I've seen people schizo posting on people that they are stalkers of, and that's not the vibe that I got from your videos at all. All right, let's just continue this though.
And that's where communism heads. It has to be autocrat. That's where it always heads. It's just like, it doesn't work without a fucking autocrat. And a lot of them say that too. They're just open about it. Like, yeah, we need we like authoritarian government of the people. It's like, right, like Stalin. Got it.
Well, those people feel that way. I don't really think that way.
But I don't think you're actually a communist, Dan.
Yeah, I mean,
Jesus Christ, dude. I'm so fucking sick of Ethan. This is what religious people do too. They have this religious thinking. They have this like religious mentality in their head where the things they say is all non-falsifiable. So Ethan will say that all communist people, all socialist people, they always will tend to authoritarianism, and they'll always say that we need to have this authoritarian leader, like this strongman leader leading our country to success. And then Dan will say, well, I don't think that way. He's like, well, you're not a real socialist then. It's the exact same thing that religious people do with atheists. They're going to be like, well, a real atheist hates God. He doesn't want God to exist. He wants God to be dead, and he rejects God. I had these religious fundamentalist friends growing up, and they would always say like, oh yeah, I don't believe in evolution because Darwin just hated God because God killed his child. He took his young son from him. And it's like, what? People actually think that? People actually think that Darwin made evolution to spite God? Like, he came up with the story of evolution to spite God? And it's like, okay, well, Matt Dillahunty, who is the most popular atheist mind on the internet right now, has said, like, okay, well, I earnestly want to believe in God, and if God wanted me to believe in him, he would reveal himself to me. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that Ethan employs religious thinking, and we'll talk about non-falsifiable claims, when he says that all communists want an authoritarian leader, and then his producer will say, well, I'm like a socialist and I don't want that. Then Ethan will say, you're not a real socialist. And it's the exact same thing with religious people. When they say that all gay people want to have sex with children or something, and the person will raise their hand and be like, well, I'm gay and I don't want to have sex with children, they'd say, well, you're not a real gay person then. So it's just a way that you can have these broad blanket statements without really doing that much work and kind of your analysis. Once again, just an example of him not doing good analysis, and then he'll just say this, and if you try to push back against it, he'll be like, well, it doesn't matter what you say because this applies to like a broad general group of people.
I think like
all these labels are fucking dumb anyway. Like, what does that mean to be a communist in a society where we do not have communism? I mean, do I think that is like sort of long-term goal or model of society that seems desirable in the abstract? Yeah, but like obviously we're very far away from that. And yeah, I mean the people that advocate for, you know, vanguardism and violent authoritarianism to enforce that vision, that ain't my vibe.
I know it's not, and that's what I'm saying. You're not like them.
Yeah. You're one of the good ones, Dan. You're one of the good socialists. Also, it's kind of dumb to say that if you advocate for violent totalitarianism to enforce that vision, when you're saying that there is no system of communism at all. What group of communists are there right now who actually have violent authoritarianism to enforce communism? Like, there is no communism at all. But
what we should really be asking Dan is, how do you feel about Zionism, bro? How do you feel about justification, Ethan's apologia for the IDF? What do you think of that? Well, probably, if he probably can't say how he really feels about it, or he's a piece of shit. Thank you.
And that's why I'm trying to say, like, my problem isn't necessarily with socialism. I mean, I myself am a social democrat for sure. My problem is with these fucking authoritarians that want to control you, that are illiberal, that are against personal freedoms in the service of supposed equality.
Okay.
And worst of all, they don't want to hear a second of my pro-Israeli, pro-genocide dog shit. They don't want to hear it for a second. Authoritarian freaks. Weirdo.
So I think this is hilarious. So Ethan Klein is doing the kind of economic version of what he's been doing with Palestine this entire time, where he will criticize his perceived end result of the goals that people are pushing for. In terms of Israel and Palestine, people are pushing for an immediate end to the genocide and then an eventual end to apartheid and unequal rights for Palestinian and Jews in Israel and Palestine. Ethan will say, well, we can't even talk about ending the genocide right now because your eventual goal is untenable. Right now there's a genocide going on and people hate each other. So how can we ever have a one-state solution where people are living peacefully side by side? Don't talk about ending the genocide. I want to talk about how wrong you are in the idea that people can live side by side with each other. So that's what Ethan is doing. That's the strategy that he uses to discredit pro-Palestinian voices. He'll say, don't talk about ending the genocide. What you're advocating for down the line is so unhinged because people hate each other right now. So why are we even talking about that? So that's what he does on Israel Palestine. It's the same thing that he's doing now when it comes to economy. When Ethan says, I don't support communists because I'm a social democrat, but what they're advocating for down the line is so unhinged. They want Stalin to resurrect from the grave and control everyone in the name of equality. We're going to have this top-down authoritarianism in the name of equality. Meanwhile, what are communists advocating for right now? At least the ones that aren't fascist tankies. They're advocating for a little bit more wealth equality, which is what, in theory, Ethan advocates for as well. I mean, in theory, I don't actually know if that's true or not. I mean, he says that he's a social democrat and he says he supports Bernie Sanders. So let's hope that's true. But like, instead of having common cause with these people and worrying about kind of their authoritarian tendencies when we actually have a little bit more equality and a little bit more sovereignty, he says that no, what you're advocating for down the line is so dangerous and beyond the pale that we can't even, like, I'm going to specifically attack you now because hypothetically in like 15 years, you're going to take away my rights. So I'm going to spend my time attacking communists now. But he's ignoring the fact that right-wing conservatives are taking away people's rights as we speak. They're making it more difficult for people to vote. They're making healthcare worse. They're making like women's bodily autonomy worse. They're trying to get children to go back to the mines. Like, every single aspect of life that people are enjoying is getting taken away by these conservatives that have power now. And Ethan ignores all of that and says it's the communists that are trying to take away people's rights. Because if they ever achieve their dream of communism, they're going to have this authoritarian, totalitarian, 1984 style government that's going to make everyone equal by taking away their rights. It's a really interesting mental rut that he's found himself in, where he has this seemingly close proximity to people, where, once again, in the Israel and Palestine stuff, he'll say that, yeah, I'm against genocide and they're against genocide. And then in the economy stuff, he'll be like, I'm for healthcare for all and I'm for a minimum wage. But instead of working with the people that he's in agreement on for these very like basic quick fixes that are super necessary, like ending the genocide and increasing minimum wage, he'll attack these people and ignore the real issue, where, again, in Israel-Palestine, the real issue is Israel's genocide, and he's not criticizing that. What he's criticizing is the people that are against that genocide, and he's not criticizing the conservatives and the capitalists in the economy issue. He's criticizing the communists, because eventually, if they ever get communism, they're going to have a totalitarian regime. It's very difficult for me to take him seriously when he doesn't actually advocate for issues, and at the end of the day, what is his effective rhetoric? Well, his effective rhetoric is, he says that he's for change, but the only criticism that he has is reserved for people that are pushing for that change. And he's saying, well, I'm for the change that they're pushing for, but the end result of what they're doing is going to be bad. So I'm actually against that. And it's the same with communists as it is with pro-Palestinian voices. And so he is just a mouthpiece for the status quo in terms of the economy, and he's a mouthpiece for the status quo in terms of Israel. He loves the apartheid of Israel, and he loves this liberal capitalism that we have in America. And once again, his effective rhetoric is attacking the people that have been the biggest advocates for change. And so it's just it's really gross coming out of this guy's mouth. He's a status quo liberal.
I think I just thought of an apt comparison. What Ethan's doing is basically like, say you were alive, say you were a German, just a regular German. Maybe you consider yourself a social democrat. In Germany at the time, while the Holocaust is happening, and your position would basically kind of be, this is terrible. I'm against this Holocaust that's going on right now. Really bad. But why can't you accept the fact that, you know, Jews run the banks? Why can't you give me a little
noted?
Give me a little leeway on that they're trying, that just maybe possibly they're trying to enslave the white race. You can't give me a little bit on that? Can't give into a little bit? That, like, you know, we should be building a one state, one ruler, one people. We should be building that for, you know, to keep us safe from this which is basically a threat, right? That you cannot even negotiate with the Jews. Hey, motherfucker. You can't fence sit on this shit. You can't fence sit on fascism. There's no middle ground. You're either with them or against them. And even if you're like, I don't support them, if you're not fighting them, then it doesn't matter if you support them or not. You're helping them. Your lack of fighting against the fascist does nothing but help the fascists, because the fascists will never stop fighting. Ever. That's just my opinion.
Don't talk about ending the genocide. I want to talk about how wrong you are in the idea that people can live side by side with each other. So that's what
you know, there's all these 12 people who've been advocating for something they call proletarian patriotism lately, which is basically like socialism with American characteristics when it comes down to it, like a nationalist form of like socialism in the US that like tries to reclaim US history and symbols for socialism somehow, despite the fact that the US is the world's premier empire and has been for a very long time now, and was founded as an oppressive empire by subjugating indigenous nations. You know, there's a bit of a contradiction there, right? And they've been appealing to Lenin to defend this, which I think doesn't really make much sense, because Lenin talks a whole lot about the national question and the right to self-determination, and he's very much in favor of the right to self-determination. In fact, he puts it above basically anything else, right? Like he says, like, you know, practical circumstances don't matter. We must always advocate for the right to self-determination, the right to secession, stuff like that. We must always advocate for these things. And one of the texts that these people have been citing to defend this notion is a text by Lenin, which he also covers very similar themes in his much longer essay on self-determination, which is much more famous. So this text is called On the National Pride of the Great Russians. So they've been sort of cherry-picking small parts of this where Lenin talks about having a sense of national pride and trying to use that to advocate for essentially basing an entire socialist movement around the national pride of an oppressor nation, in this case the USA. But in Lenin's time, there was a pretty analogous example being the Russian Empire. So a lot of this is very directly comparable to this present example. So starts off, what a lot of talk, argument, and vociferation there is nowadays about nationality and the fatherland. Liberal and radical cabinet ministers in Britain, a host of forward-looking journalists in France, who have proved in full agreement with their reactionary colleagues, and a swarm of official cadet and progressive scribblers in Russia. The cadets, I think they were the main liberal party in Russia, all have effusive praise for the liberty and independence of their respective countries, the grandeur of the principle of national independence. Here one cannot tell where the venal eulogist of the butcher, Nicholas Romanov, or of the brutal oppressors of Negroes and Indians ends. You see that reference that he makes to Indians there? That's very important, because Lenin actually had a pretty ignorant view of the American reality. He very rarely mentioned Indian nations, because his reading of America came from the sort of like American propagandistic anthropological texts that filtered over to Europe and that were translated into the languages that he spoke, which were mainly German and Russian. So he had a very skewed view of the US, and his writings that directly deal with the US basically just don't consider the fact that the Indian people, like Indian Native American people, existed at all. So for him to acknowledge this in this instance is pretty important, with the brutal oppressors of Negroes and Indians, blah, 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 and where the common Philistine begins, who from sheer stupidity or spineless drift with the streams begins. So he's clearly saying here, like, so these liberals are advocating for national independence and like national pride, etc. And he's like saying in the very next sentence, explicitly referencing, you know, the brutal oppressors of the Negroes and the Indians. You know, like he's saying, well, where does your national pride begin, and does it include the reality of your oppression of black people and your land theft of indigenous people? Very important acknowledgement there. And he goes on to say, we see before us an extensive and very deep ideological trend whose origins are closely interwoven with the interests of the landowners and the capitalists of the dominant nations. Dominant nations there, very important. He's talking about the main empires. Scores and hundreds of millions are spent every year for the propaganda of ideas advantageous to these classes. And a pretty big mill race which takes its waters from all sources. So, You know, who do you think the propaganda of ideas advantageous to the dominant classes comes from in regard to the USA? Is it from people who advocate for self-determination against people or people who don't? I think it's fairly obvious. So Lenin goes on to say in the next paragraph how great Russian being essentially people across the Russian Empire, the Tsarist Russian Empire, who identify as Russian in a sort of nationality or ethnic sense or cultural sense. And he says it would be unseemly for us, representatives of a dominant nation in the far east of Europe and a good part of Asia, to forget the immense significance of the national question, especially in a country which has been rightfully called the prison of the peoples, and particularly at a time when, in the far east of Europe and in Asia, capitalism is awakening to life and self-consciousness. A number of new nations, large and small, at a moment when the Tsarist monarchy has called up millions of great Russians and non-Russians so as to solve a number of national problems in accordance with the interests of the Council of the United Nobility, blah, 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 blah. He's saying that it is very important for the people of dominant imperialist nations, such as the Russian Empire, who are part of that dominant nation, part of its main, ethnic or national group, not to forget the immense significance of the national question. Applied to the US context, this would be the significance of the national question for indigenous peoples. That right to self-determination. And this is what most of these people have been quoting to say that Lenin supports them. This singular sentence is a sense of national pride alien to us, great Russian class-conscious proletarians. Certainly not. We love our language and our country, and we are doing our very utmost to raise her toiling masses to the level of democratic and socialist consciousness. We should take, sure, we take pride in our culture, our language, etc. But mainly, we want to take pride in the fact that we are against the oppression of the nation that we happen to be a part of. And this is emphasized soon after that, where he talks about national pride again. We are full of a sense of national pride, right? A sense of national pride. He's not saying we need to base our entire movement or a theoretical state on national pride for an imperialist nation. He says for that reason, we particularly hate our slavish past and our slavish present. When these landed proprietors, aided by the capitalists, are loading us into a war in order to throttle Poland and the Ukraine, crush the democratic movement in Persia and China, and strengthen the gangs of the ruling class who are a disgrace to our great Russian national dignity. Next sentence here is very important. Nobody is to be blamed for being born a slave, but a slave who not only eschews a striving for freedom, but justifies and eulogizes his slavery. Example, calling for the throttling of Poland and Ukraine, or a defense of the fatherland of the great Russians. Such a slave is lickspittle and a bore, who arouses a legitimate feeling of indignation, contempt, and loathing. He clearly says here that those who identify with a nationalism that justifies and eulogizes the Russian Empire, analogous to the American imperial state, which has always been an imperial state from its very beginning, lickspittle slaves and bores who arouse legitimate feelings of indignation, contempt, and loathing. Do you know who that is? It's these socialist patriots. That's who it is. It really couldn't be much clearer, right? If you uphold the nationalism, the nationalist mythology, the national symbols, the sort of hegemonic culture of an imperialist oppressive state such as the US, and uphold its throttling of self-determination in the nations that it directly oppresses. He uses here the examples of Poland and Ukraine, but in the US example, we have all of the indigenous nations which the US was literally built on oppressing. But he's basically saying you fucking suck and are an idiot. It's very clear. The situation is incredibly analogous. He goes on to say, no nation can be free if it oppresses other nations. Now, I want to sort of clarify here that these sort of socialist nationalists very much advocate for the continued sovereignty of the USA over all of the American landmass. They're explicitly against indigenous self-determination. When it comes to the question of indigenous self-determination, they retreat to a notion of autonomy and of democratic land sharing, which is fundamentally not self-determination. Self-determination is indigenous people determining what they want to do with their nations, with their land themselves. Not you saying, oh yeah, we're going to allow them autonomy within our socialist nation built on their land. What that is the reservation system. Indigenous nations in the US and Canada, I think the US more so, I'm not as informed on the Canadian system, already have autonomy on their reservations. We're essentially saying, okay, the status quo for them can continue. We're not going to do anything to resolve the still pending national question about Indigenous people and their land, which is fundamentally incompatible with Vladimir Lenin in every respect. To him, the national question, the self-determination of oppressed nations, was incredibly important. Tsarism not only oppresses 9/10 of the people economically and politically, but also demoralizes, degrades, dishonors, and prostitutes them by teaching them to oppress other nations and to cover up this shame with hypocritical and quasi-patriotic phrases. In the very next paragraph here, Lenin explicitly denounces these sorts of socialist nationalists who insist on holding on to the vestiges of so-called patriotism or nationalism of the previous oppressive state. You know, things like its flag, its symbolism, its whitewashed historical mythology, and its continued oppression of the national groups that it oppresses, who again, in the US case, are the indigenous people. We should condemn socialist chauvinists, who should be called Tsarist socialists. Okay? Then he goes on to say, the interests of the great Russian proletariat require that the masses be systemically educated to champion most resolutely, consistently, boldly, and in a revolutionary manner. Like, he really cannot emphasize the importance of this more. Complete equality and the right to self-determination for all nations oppressed by the great Russians. Let's apply that to the US circumstance. What would that mean? Indigenous self-determination? Not just in their reservations, but over the land that was conquered and stolen from them in order to form the United States of America. And it doesn't mean that you get to dictate what that self-determination looks like. It doesn't mean you get to say, well, you can be autonomous within our wider American nation or whatever. It means self-determination. It means they choose what to do with their own nation, okay? They choose what to do with their own land. You know, these people will probably make the argument to that, well, then what about all the other people here? Don't they get a say in this? I mean, sure, but I don't think they get a say to, like, form their own, like, nationalist nation state based on the nationalism of the worst empire in modern history, the USA, that also directly oppressed these people. Should they get a say, within these indigenous nations or within like an indigenous confederacy or whatever you might want to imagine? Absolutely. Same as anyone else. But these people don't want to do that. They want the exact opposite. They want essentially like a white supremacist state, essentially like that is a continuation of the previous US state, except now socialist, that will then dictate what indigenous people can do. The polar opposite of indigenous self-determination. And I want to emphasize here that when it came to reproducing the symbolism and the national mythology of Tsarist Russia, as these people sort of reproduce the symbolism and national mythology of the United States of America, like, let me show you the absolute worst example of that in Peter Coffin. Do you think Lenin would have supported some guy like wearing a fucking onesie with the Russian Tsarist flag on it and being like, proletarian patriotism? No, he would have fucking hated this guy. Flag of the Soviet Union. Do you see any remnants of the Tsardom in this flag? No. Flag of the Russian Soviet Socialist Republic. Do you see any remnants of the Tsarist flag in this flag? No. The patriotism and nationalism and national pride that Lenin talked about was clearly not the same as what these people think it is. They clearly did not want to inherit any of the ridiculous nationalist mythology of the previous oppressive state. Now, these people might say, isn't it kind of a little bit unfair that these indigenous people will get so much land, blah, blah, blah? That's obviously not how the state is going to work. They're not going to immediately take over the entire landmass and just kick you all out. If you think that you're just a racist, obviously not. But still, the argument that, they shouldn't get self-determination because it's not fair because there's so much more of us, blah, blah, blah. You can apply that same sort of argument to fucking Israel. Do you not support Palestinian sovereignty over Israel and land back in Palestine? Those two positions are fundamentally in conflict with one another. Either you support both or you don't. And there's more to this. If we look at Lenin's work on his essay on self-determination, he specifically addresses one important point that these people also like to use regarding practicality. So I've seen some of them say, for example, that, indigenous national self-determination is not practical. So what does Lenin have to say about that? Now, I just want to note that obviously you're allowed to disagree with Lenin, but these people constantly reference Lenin as if he justifies denies everything that they're saying here. Just look at Peter Coffin. Lenin advocated for great Russian pride. Lenin. Okay, if you're going to reference Lenin, it's, you know, you can advocate whatever the fuck you want, but don't reference Lenin if he clearly contradicts you in every meaningful respect. I think Lenin was wrong about a lot of things. For example, he also had this incredibly cringe vindication of the US state, which I will go over soon. But on this, in my opinion, he was very much on point. Let us consider the position of an oppressor nation, the USA. Can a nation be free if it oppresses other nations? It cannot. The interests of the freedom of the great Russian population require a struggle against such oppression. In the case of the USA, that would be a struggle against the oppression of indigenous nations. The long, centuries-old history of the suppression of the movements of the oppressed nations, again, suppressing their self-determination on their own terms would be suppressing the movement of the oppressed nations. And the systemic propaganda in favor of such suppression coming from the upper classes have created enormous obstacles to the cause of freedom of the great Russian people itself in the form of prejudices, etc. We, the great Russian proletarians, who defend no privileges whatsoever, do not defend our privilege to an independent national state either. And it says in the very next paragraph, we cannot move towards the goal of national liberation for ourselves included unless we uphold the equality of the various nations. That means that indigenous nations should have a right to self-determination. Read the next, he goes on, wherever the Ukraine, for example, is destined to form an independent state is a matter that will be determined by 1,000 unpredictable factors. Without attempting idle guesses, we firmly uphold something that is beyond doubt, the right of the Ukraine to form such a state. We respect this right. He constantly refers to it as a right, okay? We do not uphold the privileges of the great Russians with regard to Ukrainians. We educate the masses in the spirit of recognition of that right, in the spirit of rejecting state privileges for any nation. By state privileges, he means the oppression of one state over another. So here, Lenin states, refuting Rosa Luxemburg, if in our political agitation we fail to advance and advocate the slogan of the right to secession, clearly, the right to secession, aka self-determination. So secession here means secession from an oppressor nation such as Russia or from the US empire. In the US context, that would mean different indigenous nations seceding on their own terms, however the fuck they wanted to. Whether they want to form a confederacy or like a bunch of individual nations, however the fuck they want to. Doesn't matter. It's not something that you get to dictate. It's not something that you, as a member of the oppressor nation, gets to dictate. Otherwise, you're just reproducing the exact same oppression. If in our political agitation we fail to advance and advocate the slogan of the right to secession, we play into the hands not only of the bourgeoisie, but also of the feudal landlords and the absolutism of the oppressor nation. If you do not advocate unequivocally for indigenous self-determination, you play right into the hands of the bourgeoisie and of the absolutism of the oppressor nation. Couldn't be clearer. Kautsky long ago used this argument against Rosa Luxemburg, and the argument is indisputable. When, in her anxiety not to assist the nationalist bourgeoisie of Poland, Rosa Luxemburg rejects the right to succession in the program of Marxists in Russia. Very important here. The program of Marxists in Russia juxtaposed with the right to secession of the national bourgeoisie of Poland. Russia here was the nation that was oppressing Poland, okay? That's the context. In this context, it would be the program of a U.S. socialism that oppressed the unequivocal right to self-determination of indigenous nations, which this proletarian patriotism wants to do. He goes on to say that she would, by doing so, she is in fact assisting the Great Russian Black Hundreds. The Great Russian Black Hundreds were like an incredibly reactionary, practically fascist Tsarist death squad. She is in fact assisting opportunistic tolerance of the privileges and worse than privileges of the great Russians. There couldn't be a clearer denouncement from Lenin of what these people are advocating for. And he says here, the bourgeois nationalism of any oppressed nation has a general democratic content that is directed against oppression, and it is in this context that we unconditionally support. So it doesn't matter if you consider indigenous nationalism to be bourgeoisie, it doesn't matter at all. You still according to Lenin, must unconditionally support it. So the way these people are like attacking indigenous self-determination by saying, oh, but land back is bourgeoisie, land back has support from fucking Jeff Bezos or whatever, which isn't true because some morons who trademark the name land back forming an NGO doesn't delegitimize the indigenous demand, the indigenous reclamation for their ancestral land, which has existed for centuries since it was stolen, okay? But even if that were true, you still must unequivocally support indigenous self-determination struggles. It's clear as day right there in Lenin. And the idea of reforming the US state or like forming something that is like based on the patriotism and nationalism of the US state and then like trying to dictate what sort of land indigenous people get, how their self-determination looks within that state, that is not self-determination. That's essentially reproducing the exact same relation of the oppressor state against the oppressed nation. Indigenous people already have autonomy on their reservations in the US. That's not what the unequivocal right to indigenous self-determination is. So yeah, these people are really dumb, they're illiterate, they don't read the texts that they cite. It's basically just people who are generally very socially reactionary, who are still kind of indoctrinated with American exceptionalism, and they can't move past it, and they really want to get offended at people who like rightfully degrade the USA. So now they're trying to incorporate that into like patriot socialism, where you take the nationalism of one of history's worst oppressor nations and like claim that you're liberating people with it. It's obviously a total joke.
Capture zone contested.
What if I told you that the circumcision debate guy has actually challenged me to a debate or attacked me on other topics? What would you guess the other topic was? If you had to guess, I'll give you a couple of seconds to come up with something and just take a guess. What else would a shield for men take issue with about my channel? If you guessed anime, you are correct, and you probably saw me post about it on BlueSky where I made fun of it. Defending anime from obsessive Marcel, Bad Empanada. He is defending anime from obsessive Marcel, Bad Empanada. And I think it says a lot that this guy felt attacked by something that was not actually directed at like men's rights or whatever at all. He is exactly the stereotype that you would think that someone like this is.
So recently, Bad Empanada did a cringe video bashing anime and bashing anime fans, in particular male anime fans. So, because most fans of anime are men.
This is an awful injustice. Can you get a real problem? Did he actually say that?
So, yeah, and obviously he does this because most fans of anime.
He said he does this because most fans of anime are men.
Are men.
Not justice. That would have been so funny if he did, though.
And he doesn't like men. He is a man.
I am a man, actually. I have the M-word pass.
Feminist, tradcon, Marcel.
I'm a male feminist. Tradcon, Marcel. What if tradcons agree with you? How does that work? Like, tradcons are on... You are a tradcon. What are you saying?
Okay. And anime doesn't bring status, so of course he has to bash.
Anime doesn't bring status. See, this is like a theme. You said that since about status in the last video. Like, anime doesn't bring status. What?
Anime, and he's kind of obsessed with that. And he also peer smears.
Kind of obsessed with that because I made one video on it.
Anime fans and anime in general. He's sort of obsessed.
I don't need to pedo smear anime and anime fans. They do that more than enough themselves, okay? There's a reason why, like, every time you get a comment on a YouTube video from someone with, like, an anime avatar, half the time it's of a child. There's a reason for that. And it's because the anime is specifically directed at much anime. It's specifically directed at a pedophile audience, either subtly or just openly. And the ones that aren't are like cartoony, like childish remakes of themes and concepts that are done far more seriously and far better in basically any other medium. Like, people like to bring up, say, like Death Note for like an adult anime. Have you watched fucking Death Note? It's about like genius high schoolers like go on like 5-minute long evil monologues about their master fucking plans. Like even the anime that these people claim is like so good and like so mature and like not for kids, nothing like that. No. It really is just like Death Note is a show for like early teens. If I showed Death Note to like the average like 25 to 35 adult who's never watched anime before, they would tap out very quickly. That shit is embarrassing. Maybe Death Note is like an outlier, but I don't think it really is. Most anime is incredibly corny. There might be anime that sort of owns the corniness and does it well, but I haven't watched any of that. The good anime, the actual good anime that is good at what it tries to do is like the children's anime, like Dragon Ball Z. That's just like a cartoon for kids. That's fine. But when you get into the people who are obsessed with anime, like anime as a genre, as adults, rather than like, oh, I like a couple of specific shows or whatever, or I like a couple of specific movies, that is when it gets fucking weird. Like people who consider anime like a hobby, like a fandom, rather than just another genre.
With Peter's mirroring, which is weird in itself. And yeah, and by the way, I'm not going to show any clips from his video, by the way, because he's a false copyright striker.
Oh, hell yeah.
Okay, so we're just going to...
what happened is I copyright claimed one of these guys' videos, and I did it in like the nice way. So one of them made a video from a very emotional video that I made about Palestinian kids being massacred in Gaza. This one. So they took this video and they edited parts of it to make it look like I was talking about like men's rights, and that I was like on the verge of tears, not talking about massacred Palestinian children, but about men's rights. And that's not fucking on. That's disgusting. That is so fucking low and disgusting. So I copyright claimed it, and I did it in the nice way too, where you get a week to respond and voluntarily remove it, or you get a copyright strike. And the guy did not respond, so after the week, he automatically got a copyright strike. He could have just voluntarily removed it and not had his channel action in any way, but he chose not to. So yeah, you made a low-effort, non-fair use video where you edited my words to make it look like when I was actually talking about an incredibly serious topic, I was actually like talking about fucking circumcision and men's rights activism or some shit. I gladly copyright strike that, and I copyright struck it completely legitimately as well, because it was not fair use. It was my video with like a filter added to it and cut up. That's not fair use. Let's see what else my man has to say about anime.
What he said in his video and replied to it from memorization alone. So he has ready here anime with war themes and anime with deep themes Google searches. He's gonna show us that anime is actually really serious. Let's go over this, okay? Attack on Titan. That's just an anime again about like heroic teenagers, about high schoolers who are like superhuman heroes, and they all have squeaky voices and they all look like they're perennially 14 years old. And it's also like fascist, just overtly fascist. I know enough about it to know that. Anime with deep themes. That's the thing. These sorts of animes are like, they're made so that adults can feel like their childhood obsessions could cater to. They're made for people who did not grow out of cartoons. Basically all of it is very similar to that. The one that I know of here that is not like, there's two that I can comment on. Legend of the Galactic Heroes is for people who like want Star Trek but way worse and animated. It's basically an anime niche thing for people who don't know what Western sci-fi is, because it's just heavily inspired by it and basically robs it from it in every way, shape, and form. Or people who are obsessed with anime and specifically want just an anime that does worse what has already been done, way better in every other medium. That is far more suited to the task as well. Because, every single character doesn't look like a fucking baby-faced teenager. Grave of the Fireplace is obviously a serious adult animated film. I have no problem with that. The rest of this shit, I do not know about it, and I do not want to know about it, but I mean, I can tell you just from, look at this one, for example. You can look at the fucking thumbnail. There's like a blonde-haired girl with like a triangle face and massive blue eyes who looks like a fucking caricature of a child. And I'm sure in canon she's like 25 years old or whatever, but I think it's funny that even when you Google popular anime with war themes, like serious themes, you still get shit like that popping up, which just proves my point. Like, what is that art? That's so fucking bad. Triangle face, massive blue eyes, edgy black hair guy looking away from the camera while holding like a blue lightsaber thingy. Whoa, I'm so cool. If you watch that, You were a fucking perennial child. It's like still watching Star Wars in your 40s, but worse because Star Wars has less pedophilia. Let's see what else our friend has to say here.
Said that like anime is only for kids or something, and he brought up and that's really the only anime that he named there in his little rant video, right?
Yeah, I brought it up as an example of like a normal, acceptable anime made for kids. The same thing, you know, animated Western animated stuff is directed at children primarily as well, for a good reason. Kids like animated stuff. It's more engaging for them. It also allows you to like pursue more fantastical things more easily than like live action does. And kids like that sort of thing. Look, if you're defending dumb anime shit about like hyper competent superhero high schoolers being attacked by like flesh giants in a gated city, you need to get the fuck out of here. You are not an adult. You have not grown up yet. Liking that sort of thing and defending it as deep is about equivalent to like it's equivalent to like being an adult who thinks The Hunger Games is like an awesome deep book slash movie series. That's what this sort of anime is, except with more pedophilia. Again, they both share the same sort of themes all the time. Hyper competent like high school age kids who usually look like children and who are like heavily like infantilized. Like the girls always have like extremely squeaky voices and look like kids, like saving the world or whatever. It's the same sort of thing as like young adult fiction, which, you know, normal to watch that when you're like 13 or 14. Not normal to watch it when you're like a 30-year-old adult man, especially given that the anime side of that has like heavily implied pedophilia or just outright pedophilia constantly, and like sexualized teenagers at best, sexualized children at worst.
And yeah, he didn't bring up any examples of other anime, right?
I
but
don't
he
need
said
to.
the whole medium
Everyone knows that what I'm saying is true.
Shit, right? He bashed the whole medium. He said it's all
I have
shit.
no water.
It's
This
all
is a
trash.
tragedy.
You know, he didn't really.
Is this
bring
really
up,
like the worst thing? Is this like what's important to you, man? Is this what is important to you? Is this and circumcision? You need a real problem, dude.
any examples, which indicates that he doesn't really know anything about anime. So why even talk about it? If you don't watch anime, if you don't like anime, why even talk about it? It's like he only does this to posture to his female audience, right?
What?
That's the only reason.
Is my audience female? I didn't know that. Welcome, girls.
He does this. But yeah, anyway, he talked a lot of bullshit, like, for example, that...
Do you think that girls don't like anime as well? Like, there are so many women who are like adult anime fans as well, who are just as embarrassing as the men.
There is nothing of substance in anime or something, right? Okay, first of all...
He's gonna prove it to me by... You know, I just talked about this, like Googling anime with war themes, anime with deep themes. Okay, let's Google like children's books with deep themes. Hey, look, there's children's books with deep themes as well. The Giving Tree, The Rainbow Fish, The Boy Who Wanted to Be a Deer. Children's books with war themes. Oh, look, there's plenty of those as well. I don't know if The Diary of Anne Frank is a children's book, but okay. This does not prove that anything that I'm saying is wrong. I already like responded to what he's about to say beforehand, because I mean, you can tell just from looking at the screen what he's about to say. Let's look at his other tabs. Anime, like TDF, anime affliction on human something. Japan, anime watching frequency. Petition, calling on Reddit to what? Something about men's rights, I'm sure. And the other tab is men's rights movement. Average men's rights browser.
There are many anime that actually talk about stuff that he talks about in a lot of his videos.
Show me the anime denouncing Zionism.
Like war.
No, still, an anime denouncing Zionism through the medium of like hyper-competent 14-year-olds saving Palestine from Israel would not be acceptable either. That would be fucking bizarre and weird. That would be bizarre. That would be incredibly uncomfortable and weird. So even if that was true, like, what the hell? We don't need like like that's what anime basically is. Anime was yassification before yassification, except imagine if yassification like de-aged you to 14 years old every time. That's what like the anime art style does. And if you can watch anime, most anime at least, like there is like Studio Ghibli stuff that tends to be more serious and has a much better art style than the vast majority of anime. But if you can watch anime, watch this sort of shit where in most of them the protagonist is like a 14-year-old who like looks like it's just such a it's terrible art as well. It looks horrible. It's like made to be mass produced basically, and they have like eyes like this, barely any like facial features or any discernible facial features beyond like the normal ones, like they have a nose and a mouth, and they just look like they yassified, except they're 14 years old. That's just fucking weird, okay?
Apartheid and racism, a lot of these topics are covered in a lot of anime. Like you can see on screen here, like.
These topics are also covered in the fucking Hunger Games. Yet if you're obsessed with that when you're 30 years old, it's fucking like there's something wrong with it. Same with like Harry Potter. Harry Potter is a great example. Harry Potter covers very serious themes like slavery, for example. And there are plenty of people who are 40 years old and their identity is based around Harry Potter, and I think exactly the same with them.
All kinds of anime cover topic of war and racism.
Whoa, there's a topic of war? That means it's serious and adult, and you can't like dislike the fact that it covers war through like the eyes of the protagonists who are all fucking 14-year-old girls who look like they're 8.
Height and stuff like that. Running 3 relevant topics. Right? So he doesn't know what he's talking about, obviously. And this is just a simple Google search. Right? This doesn't even...
Look at this Google search. He proved me wrong here.
All the anime, right? And
look at these children's books with war themes. This means that it's normal to be obsessed with children's books when you're 40 years old now. It's that simple.
Anime have deeper themes, especially in regards to technology and stuff like that, right? Which is also very relevant. Like you see all these algorithms and these AIs manipulating people psychologically. That is very relevant, and that is covered in a lot of anime.
Really raking in the thing.
Right?
Like if I wanted to watch The Matrix, but with a 14-year-old anime girl protagonist, and everyone has like a really squeaky voice, and there's like just an unnecessary love triangle inserted in there. Look, I just wouldn't watch that, and I would watch The Matrix instead, okay? Because that's what anime is. Anime that covers serious themes is shit like that.
Serial Experiments Lane and Psychopaths in particular. Right, so a lot of deep stuff for...
Like, the reason why anime is so bad, I think primarily is for 3 reasons. One, the catering to pedophiles, so they de-age everyone. It's like a fucking George R.R. Martin book, except an entire genre. It's an incredibly low-effort, easy-to-do art style into anime. It's just, there's very little detail to the vast majority of anime looks like shit. It's very easy. It's like mass-produced, because, you know, they make like 10... 15 fucking seasons of the same fucking thing, and they have to get it out on the schedule. You know, it's just easy to make. And third, because it's something that's really easy to make, what you get out of it is like these sorts of undercooked, shitty treatments of supposedly serious themes, where you get ridiculous shit like the plot is like driven forward by fucking teenagers every single fucking time. All of the women have like triangle faces, huge eyes, and of course they're like hopelessly, and all of them are hopelessly in love with whichever male protagonist, who happens to be the male protagonist of whatever the anime is. It's just like, you can't fucking take it seriously. If you showed it to anyone who is not already initiated as like a teenager, they would be immediately be like, dude, what is this? Why are you watching this? There is nothing that any anime has ever done that could not be, and that has not been, a million times better done in another medium. That simple. Like, no, I'm not going to watch your animified version of whatever the fuck, okay? Watch this, watch that. No, I won't do that. I'm not a child like you. You need to grow the fuck up. It's time to stop